I'm Kayla Knierim. Welcome to the Tip-Off, the show that sets the stage for all the most important news, daily fantasy plays, and bets on tonight's 15-game MLB slate. Clippers, Mavs, Game 6, and the Belmont Stakes. My microphone that's just here for show, I realize is not in front of my face. Hi, guys. How are we doing? We've got Chris Spags and Ben Rasa here today. What's good, fellas?
I'm good. Glad to be back here after the schedule got moved around. So I had to do an MLB show yesterday. Eytan came on here, and it was honestly like watching another man sleeping with your significant other or woman, I guess, depending upon. We're very progressive here. Just seeing him flirt with Ben Ross on the show, call him a doctor. That's where I'm supposed to be. So it just hurt me to see that. But no, I'm glad to be back here. It's Friday. I feel like closing out the week of shows here with this one. Always a fun one. So glad to be back with both Kayla and Ben today.
Yeah, we missed you, Spags. It was you actually, you're lucky you weren't on the show. Well, we're going to get into it in a little bit, but the Blazers gutless, the Lakers were even worse. Not the best NBA night, but we got into some antics, and certainly we got the ponies here. I saved the Belmont Stakes for you because I know you're a huge horse guy. We were going to talk it yesterday, but you know what? We saved it for today.
Just for Spags.
That's all I asked for, really. That's, in fact, one of my contract demands is that but whenever there is a show that we could talk about the Belmont Stakes or the European soccer final, really all those things, give them all to me because I just know them all like the back of my hand.
Where do we put in demands for a contract? I don't.
I mean, I just yell them into the air and hope eventually it's going to work out while shaking my fist at the sky.
Noted. All right. Well, friends, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for countless hours of content on the NBA, MLB, NHL, PGA, MMA, NASCAR, and, of course, every other sport that's in season. Let's talk about our sponsor, No House Advantage, who is taking a different spin on daily fantasy sports by offering player prop contests across the NBA, MLB, NFL, and PGA for cash prizes. This exclusively peer-to-peer fantasy sports platform levels the playing field and makes it easier for you to win real cash compared with your traditional DFS sites. With over 500 player props offerings, No House Advantage is the largest provider of player props in the industry. And the best part is that you will receive a $20 first match deposit bonus today using promo code Awesemo. Be your friends, not the house. Download in the App Store and win big with player props today. Heading into our bad beats. Also, I ate a salad right before this, so if there's lettuce in my teeth, just let me know. Yesterday saw the Lakers and Blazers get unceremoniously dumped in Game 6s while golf and MLB roll on. How did it go for you both? Ben, we'll start with you today.
No, it did not go well at all. There were no bad beats in there. It was just, sometimes you look at a game and you break it down and things don't go according to plan. The Blazers, I was happy that they punched first. I did have them in the first quarter, but credit to the Nuggets. They kind of weathered the storm, and when you get 6 threes in a quarter from Michael Porter Jr., that helps too. But late in that game, I mean, I guess you could blame it on the altitude from the other game. It looked like Lillard and even McCollum to an extent were a little out of gas, and certainly Jokic did what he did. The Lakers, what can you say? They just had nothing left in the tank. AD playing probably wouldn't even made a difference. He was clearly hobbled for the 5 minutes he was out there, and the Suns just rolled past him. So I thought we'd be going to Game 7, Spags, and that is obviously not the case.
I actually did not think the Lakers were going to win that one, so that wasn't the worst part. The worst part to me was Chris Paul not being a big factor in that all, and he was playing well down the stretch. I think sort of brought it in the fourth quarter where he clearly was affected by that shoulder injury, was missing a lot of threes. But what the issue for me, the bad beat part of it all was if Chris Paul hit 2 out of those 3 shots that he had in the fourth quarter, I think there was a point where my girlfriend went out to dinner with her friends, came home, and I was like, if Chris Paul does anything right now, like I'm going to win another $100,000. And it was like very obviously, as you might guess, excited at that prospect to make myself not look like a one-hit wonder from last week. And Chris Paul instead misses everything, misses 2 threes, misses a shot at the rim, doesn't get to the double-double bonus on DraftKings, and then just doesn't give me the points. I ended up not finishing or not getting to first place by 10 points in one lineup. So that's cruel is what that is, first of all. And second of all, it's what, look, you're going to run good, you're going to run bad. That's the variance of it all that we talk about a lot on the channel. But just Chris Paul doing a little bit more would have been very helpful for me. So I'll qualify that along with the abuse of producer Tyler here and his delicate groin, also part of the bad beats. You guys don't even know this, but I shouldn't talk as though everybody watched NBA Live Before Lock yesterday. We were discussing Anthony Davis's groin and his injury or whatever.
Okay.
And earlier in the day, Tyler had shown before the MLB Deeper Dive show his groin injury from the past and how it affected his movement. So he's like standing up and showing like, yeah, I'm going to do a Tyler impression. Yeah, I couldn't move my groin around that much. It's like this is going over this way. It's all tight and such. And I feel like that's stuck with me. So I mentioned that for Anthony Davis during the show, and it became a whole bit about Tyler's groin. And then there were HR things HR jokes rather, not actual HR things behind the scenes. But that's the extent of my groin talk.
I hate that word.
Groin? What about a moist groin?
Ew. Oh my gosh. Ew. Why would you do that?
Well, because that's the other word people hate. They hate the word moist.
It's true.
I guess those two don't go great together.
You know, Spags, this is the kind of hard-hitting analysis we needed on the show yesterday. I do want to ask you real quick, though, because first of all, congratulations from last week. I have not seen you in person
since. Right. Thank you, Ben.
You had mentioned that you actually didn't really sweat that one, and this one you were sweating, correct?
Yeah, and I guess maybe that is. I know, Ben, you share some of the neuroticism of the people who are bettors of the past. But yeah, like I do usually prefer to sweat things, though I do feel like if you had the success not sweating it, I probably should just not watch the games. But I enjoy basketball too much. Yeah, I was sweating out every play, watching Chris Paul, watching him not get minutes, hoping that campaign would then do enough to help out another lineup. But it was one of those spots where neither part of it got there. But yeah, that's the downside of DFS. You can make the best plays. Monty Morris, Michael Porter Jr., of course, coming through again. Talked about in the NBA Live Before Lock yesterday, but yeah, did sweat it out this time, Ben, and did not get the good results.
Yeah.
Tyler, with the sound effects, I like that. What else are you going to throw at us during the show today? I'm excited. All right, we've got a new segment, Stacks on Stacks. Here we go. With the tip-off part of a 3-hour MLB stream today, let's start off by heading to the Diamond for some of the top bets and plays on tonight's MLB slate before the MLB Deeper Dive and Live Before Lock crew takes you through the full slate right after this show today. And that means a new segment that we'll call Stacks on Stacks, a look at some of Awesemo's top projected stacks on the day, straight from Awesemo Top Stacks tool. So guys, which of these do you like the most? We'll go through these one by one, I guess. Is that right, Spags?
Yeah. Let's see how that goes. If we're taking too long, we can.
Okay. We've got the A's at Rockies, 12.4% chance of being top stack plus 20% expected ownership. Spags, take it away.
Yes, there's a lot of ownership going to Oakland, and they are going against Guy and John Gray, where this is something I've started to talk about a little more on shows because I think it's something that one of our hosts, Max Smotritskiy, was really quoting launch angle numbers a lot in some of the earlier shows we were doing in the MLB season. And I was like, you know what? He brings it up. Max is a sharp guy, like very good friends with Ship My Money, another sharp guy you guys know from the channel and all the genius that he brings on a daily basis. And I started to look into a little bit more in launch angle and barrel ball rates. Barrel ball rates, something I've looked at for a while, but launch angle can be just as important to me in some of these plays and why some of them go south. The Minnesota games, they were going against a lot of Baltimore pitchers this week when they were chalk, where they just didn't get off because the pitcher is just not giving guys chances to get that ball up. I do think in this spot, that's how I'm feeling about John Gray, is that historically he's been a guy that does normally avoid a lot of power, just a league average home run rate since 2019, despite the fact he's pitching half his games in Coors. And this year, he's only got a 6.2 degree launch angle and also a very low barrel ball rate at 2.8%. So in Coors, like, yeah, the ball's going to fly more, but you do have to get lift on it to make it fly in the way that's really going to make a stack have that potential. So when you see a team that has ownership of like over 30% for some guys, every position in the whole order going to be owned over 10%, most of them over 15 and 20. I think you can move away from Oakland here, or at least, try to get to one-offs more, maybe a mini stack more. But I think the full stack to me just looks really overowned. And I think there's a potential here that they just get inhibited enough where you only see one or two guys get off instead of having, the entire team put the damage on that you normally expect to see in Coors.
Yeah, I mean, one of the reasons that this tool is, amongst, you ask people, one of the many things they love about Awesemo, and it's this tool because it identifies, it's a two-part process. You can find the best stack, and clearly by our projections, the A's are the team that has the highest percent of being that top stack, but it comes at a massive opportunity cost in the sense of that ownership. And just because they're the most likely doesn't mean that long-term you're getting the most value. In fact, in a situation like this, you're actually not getting value at all because they are overowned relative to their percentage. And I think that's something in betting and in general, people don't understand as much as they should. So that's something that you can take advantage. It hurts. You look at the total 11 runs and you want to get exposure. And I totally get that, but you have to understand as well that a ton of the field, 1/5 of the field upwards could be going here. And that makes it very, very difficult to take down large field GPPs.
And he says he doesn't like baseball.
I really don't like. I'm gonna have to talk Max, who is a very sharp guy. Him and me are neighbors. He lives right down the street, so he's a good guy. Next time I see him in person, I'm gonna have him teach me launch angles, and then I will use that on the show as if I learned it myself.
Actually, Ben, also Max has a money hat that he bought because he's on the show and felt left out. So he actually has a genuine, authentic Amazon $12 money hat that I bought for myself here. So yeah, if you want to play with that too, I think I can only enhance what you're doing as well.
All right, now I have 2 reasons to go down and see him. This is good stuff.
Next, we have the Red Sox at Yankees, 7.4% chance of being a top stack plus 6% expected ownership. Ben.
Yeah, so this is, again, it's a little more reasonable when you look at the comparison between, percent of being the top stack and the outcome. And you look at the Yankees here, it's kind of a toss-up game. Over under of 9 is one of the best outside the game at Coors. I'll let Spags talk about the Yankees pitcher because I don't know much about him. But when you look at this, again, it's a situation as we work down, you're going to see most of these stacks pretty close in percentage. The Coors one is kind of that outlier, but these is where if you do, nail the Red Sox and say they explode for a big output in Yankee Stadium tonight, the field is not going to be there nearly as much. You're talking about 1/3, almost 1/4 of the ownership compared to that A's stack. And that's really where the lucrative value is. It's less of a chance that you get there, but when you do, you get paid off so much that it is a worthwhile stack to consider.
Yeah, I think the ownership and what Ben was talking about, the top stack still, and just the fact that this is a big slate. And, Oakland, again, they're at Coors. It's sort of hard to argue that other than what I talked about with some of the launch angle stuff and John Gray's historical results. But I think in this spot, Boston's the kind of team you take stabs at because there are 15 games on the slate, 30 teams playing. There's just a chance that a team like Boston here, who is under-owned despite having the number 2 odds to be the top stack, that's a team I think to get a little bit more of. And as Ben was talking about with the pitcher, it's Michael King, a guy who's been mostly a reliever here, pitching about 47 pitches per appearance normally, about 2.5 innings worth of field time is what that's getting him. So he's not a guy you're playing for DFS, but also is a guy that for the most part is just part of that good Yankees bullpen. He himself doesn't get a lot in the way of strikeouts. Definitely possible they can get to him, though his power numbers on the year only giving up a 2% on run rate, not the best number that you'd like to see for that. But I think the issue with going to Boston here, I still like them because of the ownership being that low, but it is a good Yankees bullpen behind him. The thing you are looking for here, and it's Kayla's favorite topic that we always hit on here, the weather and Yankee Stadium going to be really good.
I was waiting for the weather.
I know. I know you are a weather gal at heart.
Love the weather report from Spags.
Humidity in New York going to be very high today, 85% humidity. The weather itself not terribly hot at 72 degrees. When you got both of those combinations, or both those things combined into one factor, it's even better. But a humid day at Yankee Stadium, the ball's going to fly a little bit more. So to me, another good team to take 1-ups for. I think maybe a little more of a 3-man stack team than a 5-man stack. But because of the ownership being that low, I think this is the kind of team you take a flyer on more than just loading up with the field on an Oakland team that could easily just fail.
All right, we've got Dodgers at Braves, 6.4% chance of being a top stack, plus 7% expected ownership. Spags.
So this is a spot for me with the Dodgers that I don't like it quite as much going against Ian Anderson. And the Dodgers are a great team. They could certainly get going in any spot. And, Atlanta really not playing as hot as it normally does. 84 degrees today, but a little bit less humid. So that's another park factor to consider when you are trying to choose between 15 different games and 30 different teams. It's in the spot, the Dodgers, decent implied total here, 4.5 runs. The ownership isn't too crazy. So if you wanted to be with the field, I wouldn't hate it. But Ian Anderson is just one of those guys who you do have to look at the opposing pitching matchup and look at a guy who does mostly make it tough on players. Only a 1.3 whip, a 3.3 xFIP is actually a pretty strong number for him, and a 26% K rate. So the Dodgers don't strike out a lot, but Anderson still gets pretty good results. I think I'm going to err on the side of just thinking Anderson inhibits that production. So to me, the Dodgers, again, another team you can get to. It's baseball. Anything can happen, but not a priority stack. And there will be one of these teams that will be a priority stack for me, just to be clear. I'm not going to be contrarian on all of them.
Yeah, I mean, when I look at this, nothing really stands out. And you mentioned Anderson, one of the higher priced pitchers. So I could see this game being a little more manageable. And when you have so many games, you do have to kind of factor that in that just by kind of raw numbers, there's going to be some teams with massive outputs today. So you really need a path for real damage if you're stacking some of these teams up. Obviously, can it happen? Of course. But, with the Dodgers, it's not like they're going to be minuscule owned. If you're talking 2%, 3%, 1%, something like that, I would have a little more interest. And there'll probably be a pass if I was stacking them up.
Breaking news, it is pouring down rain in New York right now, FYI.
I can confirm that because I'm in New York. It is pouring rain. It's humid as all. It's awful here. The thunder is rolling in as I speak.
The game still looks like it's supposed to go based on the weather models on the sites that are out there, and we don't have a postponement risk on it yet. So I guess the hope is that clears out. It says possible light rain on Fantasy Schmabs right now, so I feel like that's what I'm going with. But yeah, definitely want to watch the weather. With baseball, always you got to watch the weather, so no surprises here. And the deeper dive and Live Before Lock guys will be covering that, I'm sure, ad nauseum, because that is all the questions they will get will be about the weather over the course of those shows.
Absolutely. Next, we've got Rockies versus A's. 6% chance of being top stack plus 6% expected ownership. Ben.
So this is the other side of the Coors game. And I actually think this is more interesting than the A side just because of the ownership. Obviously, they're playing in the same conditions. And listen, the Rockies are a team that can be explosive. Now, they're not supposed to get as much of that 11 in terms of implied total when you're breaking down the runs, but it's not like that can't flip, and they're not a mess. They're plus 120. So, yeah, they're a slight dog in this game. But that doesn't mean much of anything, and I think they can get DeMontis, and you just look at them here. They're not garnering nearly as much interest, only 6% expected ownership. That is 1/3 of what the A's are getting. So you still get exposure to Coors. If I was going there, I would actually have more interest in the Rocky side of things.
That is exactly where I'm going, Ben. I think Colorado's the better play, a lot less ownership. Ben, a genius as always, and I think feels good when we land on the same one without even talking about it. But Frankie Montas on the year, I've talked about him a lot in the MLB shows, just a guy that I think the strikeout rate for the year, too, of 24%, kind of lucky from some good matchups he's had, where he just hasn't been that good of a pitcher, giving up a 270 batting average on the year. Also, the launch angle does look pretty good at 16 degrees. Barrel ball rate also very high at 12.2%, one of the highest marks on the slate for the year. So that is a bad combination of factors. We're talking about John Gray. He keeps the ball down. He mostly gets soft contact. Those are good things. A guy who's given up a lot of barreled balls, meaning you're getting the full barrel of the bat on the ball and driving those around. Like maybe they don't get a ton of home runs, though Montas also an above average league home run guy in terms of the league average, where 4.2% of runs for is what he's allowing percentage wise. In terms of the league, it's about 3%. That's a pretty big jump up for a guy who also plays in a home park that helps out pitching. So to me, Montas is one of those guys that's bound to blow up. And the fact too that he has some pretty good results recently, maybe people even play him a little bit in the hopes that he's good. It doesn't look like that right now ownership wise, but I think people maybe avoid him more than they probably should, because they'll go like, oh, he had 1 or 2 good games recently. Like, yeah, let's go. This guy's too good. Don't go there. Colorado sucks, but they suck, but they're playing at Coors and they're going against a guy who allows the ball to fly. So to me, the Rockies most under-owned stack on the slate, and one that I would want to get a lot of.
And last but not least, we've got Twins at Royals, 5.2% chance of being top stack plus 6% expected ownership. Spags.
I do like the Twins a little bit conceptually, just because Brad Keller is one of those guys that the field's going to know is a really good ground ball pitcher. And he's one of those guys, again, low launch angle, 6.4 degree launch angle. That's why he gets success he does. It's only a 24% fly ball rate. It's a pretty low number for any pitcher here, but that's just what Keller does and how he gets results. Minnesota, though, is sort of able to get those kind of swings going where they can generate more power. And they are playing Kansas City that's a little bit hotter than usual, 84 degrees, or hotter than it's been usually lately. And 52% humidity is not the best mark there, but still Minnesota, I think after a week of disappointments, them going off in this spot is not the craziest thing. And I think overall, like, not as appealing to me as Colorado, but still a team that I think is going to be worthwhile and just less so into some of the other ones that we've talked about.
Yeah, the Twins have not been good. Royals have actually been pretty hot. They've won 4 straight. But when you look at this, you have so many options. Again, I'm just going to take it back to the slate as a whole. When you have upwards of every team, 15-game slate, you can be pretty selective, and you're going to be able to isolate a lot of ownership. To me, just looking at this again, I'm just going to defer to the core side of things if it all comes in the same light there. So unless that ownership decreases a little, it's not like you can't get exposure to the Twins by any stretch, but they didn't stand out for me when I was looking over the slate.
All right. In keeping with the MLB, we're going to head to biggest bat. Which of these top 5 odds getters on OddsShopper do you guys think is the best overall bet to hit a home run tonight? We've got Matt Olson plus 230, Ryan McMahon plus 270, Mike Trout plus 275, Sal Perez plus 275, and Rafael Devers plus 285. Spags.
So I do think Matt Olson being the leading odds getter, I very much get that. He's the best home run hitter on an A's team that is full of guys who really do drive the ball down. And that's certainly the one thing that can give you some concern about what I'm talking about with John Gray and just, getting less ownership on these guys. But I think he's a strong pick here. I don't hate it, but I do think Ryan McMahon, again, just fitting my narrative here of the Coors game, and the fact that McMahon too is highest exit velocity on the team at just shy of 92 miles per hour. Like, he's a guy who can really drive the ball. And if Montas does serve him one up, McMahon's been hitting, I think, a little bit above his depth this year, but these kind of matchups are one where a guy maybe becomes a fluke, a flash in the pan kind of guy to actually having sustained success. So Olsen, a fine bet, but I think McMahon in Coors as well, with a little bit of a discount, I think to me looks like a slightly better bet.
Gonna piggyback on that. That's the guy. I mean, it's sticking with the last segment that we did. If you do think that the Rockies can get loose tonight at pretty decent ownership, certainly McMahon is someone that could be directly involved in that. So the odds wise, these guys are all pretty bunched together. You mentioned Olsen at plus 230. This is plus 270. I'll do that. I randomly picked Yelich last night, so maybe there's some method to my madness with this, but hopefully the Rockies can get loose tonight and put up a ton of runs.
Also, just worth pointing out real fast, Sal Perez has had double dongs in the last 2 games, so that's definitely boosting his stats a little bit. Still perfectly fine. He's been a monster with power on the year, but to me, that's a bet that you don't take where you're paying the juice for a guy who just has had a couple good games recently. Like for McMahon, for Olsen, you're getting that because they're playing in Coors, but that's like a legitimate reason. Perez just having a lot of home runs recently. Like if anything, I think he's less likely to hit a home run. So to me, that's just the bet that I would probably avoid.
All right. Next, we've got biggest arm. Which of these top 5 odds getters on OddsShopper do you guys think is the best strikeouts over bet tonight? And is there a good under bet that you like? We've got Max Scherzer over under 8.5 strikeouts, Zach Wheeler over under 6.5, Julio Urias over under 6.5, Freddie Peralta over under 6.5, and Matt Peacock over under 3.5. Ben.
Man, this is not what you just asked, but Scott Kazmir is still in baseball. That's news on news for me. Anyway, I'm going to say Max Scherzer going against the Phillies. They strike out a ton, 28th in the league right now, just over 10 a game. It's Scherzer. To me, he can push over that number. I'll keep it very simple.
Yeah, I do think Scherzer's the one that I'm most intrigued by. Peralta, I think also there's one thing I noted with this on OddsShopper, which is one of the advantages you could see with OddsShopper that isn't always going to be there, but is there sometimes that there were some books out there that had Freddie Peralta's line at 7.5, and then we do have the over still at 6.5 on some books. So I think that's one that just based on what Ben talks a lot, just kind of the core betting principles of what you do. Hopefully not the poor betting principles, but the core betting principles of what you do. That if the odds are a little bit higher somewhere else, it's not a bad idea to take the over at the book where you're getting slightly better odds. So I think that's just a play based on what we observe. I think wouldn't be the worst one. And I think Scherzer certainly the best arm out of all these guys. But Matt Peacock is one that is not a name you're going to hear a lot of positive things for generally. But he's in a spot, in terms of matchups on the day, the strikeouts should be there against Milwaukee. They've been striking out at a really high clip on the year against right-hand pitching. Peacock's stuff isn't good, but he does avoid power well enough and does get groundouts at a high enough rate that I think there's a chance that maybe guys chase some balls out of the zone because you feel like you should beat Matt Peacock more than you actually do. And also, he just has a fun name. I feel like I'm enjoying it more. I say Matt Peacock. So Matt Peacock, not terrible bet to take today.
All righty. Friends, get access to all the great Awesemo Plus tools and content for nearly every DFS sport out there with an Awesemo Plus weekly pass for $29.95. This includes full access to all the premium content and tools on Awesemo.com, including player projections, ownership projections, our premium Slack channel, lineup builder, and much more. Only looking to play NBA DFS? Then sign up now for our Awesemo Plus NBA weekly package for only $16.95 or our $4.95 NBA Weekly Express package, which gives you full Awesemo Plus access to NBA Showdown and single game contests. Stop guessing, start winning. Join Awesemo Plus today. We're going to head to the races with a little Belmont Stakes action. Horses, 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 horses.
I heard the horn.
There it is. There it is. Love it. Also, Ben, speaking of movies, we talked about movies yesterday on the show, Spags.
We did.
The quote I just said is from one of my favorite rom-coms, Sleepless in Seattle.
I love, well, that's a great movie. I'm more of a You Got Mail kind of guy, but I love both of those movies. So I can get down with that.
We talked about You Got Mail this week. Spags, were you on that one? Or was that Greg? No, that was Greg.
Yeah, I was not. I did see your guys' show. I do watch the tip-off, unlike some of our other co-hosts like Greg Ehrenberg, who never watched tip-off. I do put it on while I'm doing my other stuff. So I did see that.
Yeah, neither did I, but that's funny. I do.
Also,
yeah,
brilliant idea I just had for a reboot of Sleepless in Seattle. What if it's like a little bit edgier and we call it Coked Up in Seattle? Anyway, that's my Friday thoughts.
Oh my gosh.
Wow, taking it.
That got dark.
Yeah. Is that dark? I don't know. Well, we don't need to go down this path. But I don't think there's a lot of times that necessarily are that dark in that kind of experience. I feel like you're having a lot of up and then maybe some dark afterwards.
Would it still be starring Meg Ryan and Tom Hanks?
No, it'd be like younger people. Like we're rebooting it with Shailene Woodley and Zac Efron can't pull it off. Yeah.
Can Aaron act? I don't know.
We're gonna find out. But yeah, You Got Mail, Spags. Get on it. Great movie.
I won't. I simply won't.
Wow.
Back to the Belmont Stakes. We have another major horse race going on with the Belmont Stakes this weekend, though sadly one with no chance at a Triple Crown.
but there still be opportunities for big winnings.
Nice job, Spags.
But there will still be opportunities for big winnings, and our own I love Lamp. Our own Dr. Ben Rasa is ready to put his stethoscope on a horse or two to pick some winners today. Take it away, Ben. Get me out of this.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to take it. All right, we got 8 horses. So that step one, there's a couple different things to take note. One, field is much smaller. We had 20 horses in the Derby, a lot less for the Preakness as well. But the big thing for the Belmont Stakes, it's 1.5 miles, which is significantly longer than races that most of these horses are used to, longer than the Preakness, longer than the Derby. So, it's kind of a different strategy. It's just like, think about running a race. You need to pace yourself a little differently. And when these horses break, if you're going to go to the front, as I think that Rock Your World, who was a horse we saw in the Derby, is going to try to do, he's going to need to try to set pretty decent fractions. And when you look at what he did in the Derby, he got, watch the race again if you need to. He got, mauled at the start. He was a non-factor because there were 20 horses, 19 or whatever, that ultimately raced, breaking from that gate. And he was 17th, a complete throwaway race. So I do think that he will be able to set the pace. Then you've got Essential Quality, who was the Derby favorite. That was the horse that everyone before Medina Spirit pulled the upset by cheating. Essential Quality was the horse to beat. He ran pretty good in that race. He was 4th. So I have no problem with that. The problem I have with him, he's only 2-1 on the morning line. I wanted to get better odds than that. The horse that I'm going to bring up, though, is Known Agenda. He's sitting 6-1, so he's kind of not a long shot, but he's in the middle of the pack. This is another Derby horse, but he drew the 1 post for the Derby, and that's just not a great spot to break when there's 19 other horses bearing down on you. And you look at Known Agenda, you've got Ortiz aboard, Pletcher training. Everything checks out. He won the Florida Derby, and he was getting stronger as that race went on. More of a tactical horse. So I think the added distance at 1.5 miles will actually help Known Agenda. So with less traffic in the race, you only have to dodge 7 other horses. I would be stunned if he is blocked. He should get a fair shot. Is he good enough to hunt down Rock Your World or beat Essential Quality? Honestly, I don't know. But at 6-1, I'm more than willing to take that stab. And Spags, we talk about that all the time with betting. It's not just who you think is the best or who you like. It's does it gel with the odds? And when I'm getting 6-1 on that horse versus 2-1 on Essential Quality, and I have them relatively close, I'll take the longer price every time.
Yeah, I think it's hard to argue Essential Quality being the favorite here. I mean, he was sired by Tappet, who's sired 3 other Belmont Stakes winners, and the tactical speed you see with Essential Quality is just something. How could you avoid that? So an easy 2-1 favorite. I still think Essential Quality is the best bet on the board, but I agree with your take, Ben. Taking some longer odds makes sense. And also, I think it's fun to note that New York Times apparently uses SEO tricks to get Belmont Stakes odds articles that surface up, and sometimes they have great takes like that one in there about Tappet. So that's me not plagiarizing the New York Times. That is me fully attributing, unlike I guess sometimes what they've done.
Yeah, well, Tappet is an all-time awesome horse, a pulpit horse who is one of my all-time favorite horses as well. But that is a fact. Listen, Spags, there is something to that. I know people don't. We're not going to get into the nitty-gritty, but like some horses are bred more to handle either distance or grass. There are obviously turf races in horse racing. Some horses just don't like certain distances. So I think we're going to find out here. It's just a weird field, though. You have 8 horses. You have a couple that I think realistically have no shot. So when you're talking about how to structure bets and whatnot, you have a lot less permutations, and that can be a good thing because there's still money out there. Certainly me and Josh Engelman have talked about our favorite bets. That is posted our contenders video. And one of the many reasons to get in our Slack chat, tomorrow is going to be a fun day. We're going to drag Eric in there. He loves to bet the horses now. I've got him hooked. We got a great group in there who will be discussing all the races. And the last thing I always say about the Belmont Stakes, it's a great race, but it's a great day. More importantly, there are stakes races all day. So it's not just one race at 6:30. If you want to get some action, there are races literally all day to wager on.
I was going to point out one in the chat real fast from Ryan, who's one of our regulars here, asking, does a tactical horse wear a camo kit? I think a great question. Kayla, you're an expert on camo. Would you be more inclined to pick a tactical horse who is also clad in camo?
100% yes.
Okay, there we go. So
I'm partial to the camo.
I got it.
Ben,
what about a horse? A horse with camo colors out on his fur.
See, that would be so your boy Tappet. Tappet is a white horse. He is a great looking horse.
Pretty.
So his studs are usually like silver looking. Frosted was a cool horse. He was like almost blue in a way, it felt like. So he breeds some really cool horses, Tappet.
Classic Tappet. That guy
Classic
loves
Tappet's
sire,
guys. You know that guy is always acting up.
Is my guy Midnight Bourbon, or is that his name? Is he going to be in the Belmont Stakes?
No, they took mercy on. They're not going with the strategy. Third time's a charm. They gave up after the Preakness with
There's
him.
another bourbon one though, right? Like
shoot.
Bourbonnator or something, or
Bourbonic is back.
that's it. Bourbonic, yes. Bourbonnator also.
Bourbonnator. Nah, that's a Bernardini horse. Another Pletcher trained, so the same trainer as the horse that I like. Sitting 15-1, that would be truly stunning if he won. But you know what, Spags? If Essential Quality wins, maybe I'll add him to the horse pitchers behind me. I need a new one, so we'll see what we can do.
Okay, before we move on really quickly, Ben, were you surprised that the test result, the second one from Medina Spirit, came back positive?
No.
Did you see that coming?
I mean, I was surprised that Baffert, I shouldn't be surprised by anything, but when he went with his, we didn't do this. Oh, wait, no, actually, the next day we did. Sorry, my bad. So I didn't know what we were expecting. Of course, if he came out with it, it was going to be positive. Does it matter? Would the horse have won anyway? I have 100% no idea, but it's always something with Bob Baffert, and now he's finally suspended. So it's probably a good thing long term.
This is true. All right, we're going to head on down to the DK Corral for a little showdown. We're going to get back to the NBA here with the Mavs leading the Clippers 3-2, with no other series going this game, with Dallas as a 3-point home underdog. Will be the main event for the evening across the DFS sites tonight. So which play looks best to you guys? We're going to go through these one by one. Is there a value play that really jumps out from either the Mavs or the Clippers side? Spags, we'll start with you.
So the value play that's going to jump out is going to be Boban Marjanovic. We saw him start last game. He did pick up meaningful run, was a big part of what they were doing in terms of rim protection. And that was part of why they were able to get that lead, kind of kept the Clippers on their toes for the first quarter or so. And then after that, they just never really fully recovered in the way that you would have expected them to. Boban, though, I think is sort of going to be one of the riskier plays. We actually don't have him projected for a ton of ownership right now. I guess 51% to me feels kind of shockingly low given his price tag for the showdown at DraftKings is going to be pretty low as well. So I think really he's one spot to me that he's going to be very easy to put into lineups and going to open up everything else. He's playable at captain, but also he's a guy you have to consider that he's going to be the first guy who gets the hook if things start to run bad. If they trot him out as a starter again, he could very easily just play 2 minutes and then just not see the court again, and they go a different direction if he's just not being as effective. So big volatility spot to me, but the most obvious value play on the slate. And I think you should play some Dwight Powell and maybe even some Willie Cauley-Stein, some Maxi Kleber. Rotate those guys through in lineups without Boban, because if Boban doesn't get the minutes, one of those guys will. Powell in particular did get most of those minutes last game. Cauley-Stein got a few, but was picking up fouls pretty fast, not the most productive. So he just might not see the court, but that's the risk you kind of have to take on in a showdown slate.
Yeah, well said. I mean, one of the biggest edges in showdown, or really in general, is when you're leveraging, do it against the guys that are highly owned, because when you get it right, you're crushing lineups on that side if Boban busts, and your guys are more prone to having a big day. Like if Boban only plays, he gets in massive foul trouble tonight and he plays low minutes, you're directly impacting Powell, Cauley-Stein, and the other bigs for Dallas. So I think that's where you have to go for value. You know, as Spags said, you're going to run some lineups with those guys that you have to be fully prepared. It could go horribly wrong and the lineups have no shot. But again, that's the risk you're willing to take if you're not choosing the obvious pay down option in Boban.
Dr. Rasa, is there one play that you'd consider a must-have in any lineup tonight?
I mean, obviously the whole situation with Luke, every time we talk about these showdowns, it's really the same story. You know, he's going to be extremely popular. It's price, you know, it's a lofty price when you're paying 1.5x for him. I think it's, again, a situation where I tend to say, let me put him at utility just because of raw points. He's certainly going to be a factor. And if he's taking, I know he said he wanted to tone it down a little, but it's hard to not think he's not going to be launching upwards of 30 shots tonight. Once again, I don't know if he gets to 37 like that last game, but I think that's how I do it. Maybe you throw him in utility and you take one of the guys with a bigger range of outcomes. Of course, Luka could go nuts again, but there's guys cheaper than him that I think maybe you rotate around as captains, and then you hope that you just hit that magic permutation.
I think for me, the guy that I would feel like has to be in most of the lineups is going to be Kawhi Leonard. I think the price tag for him is still a better value than Paul George. And I think just based on how this is going to go, where it is an elimination game for the Clippers and one they need to win. And I guess the one risk here is that the game could potentially be one where the Clippers do steamroll. I think they can figure out what the issues that Boban caused and the zone caused last game. And I think that's sort of my main really my main concern for the day. But I do think either way, though, Kawhi is going to be a part of that blowout. And I think that's something that I'm not going to try to worry about too much, even though that is in the back of my head. And Kawhi is the guy, should be playing a ton of minutes. He's going to be productive. Paul George, we know how he can sometimes disappear in spots. That doesn't mean that's what I think is going to happen today, but I just feel like Kawhi, just some of the peripherals as well as just the ability to sort of take over games, I think is there a little bit more. So to me, Kawhi is one of the core plays. And I guess if you want to make it a little bit simpler, I would try to maybe put one of Kawhi or Paul George in every single lineup, whether it be at a captain or utility. You're probably going to get there anyway, but I do think that's one rule at Fantasy Cruncher where you just won't get any crappy lineups at all that are any ones that I think are going to have lower odds to win, because those guys, to me, there's just no way they're not in the winning lineup, even if it's not a captain.
All right, Spags, you just briefly touched on it. Which players look like the best options at captain on DraftKings or MVP on Fanduel, and which look the worst?
So I do think a captain on DraftKings is something I talk about a lot generally, where I normally don't mind just taking the captain play off the board entirely. And today that's going to be Luka Doncic. He'll be 25% owned according to our ownership projections on DraftKings today. And that's a spot to me that on FanDuel, you can't really fade the chalk MVP quite as much. I mean, you can, like Luka's going to be the chalk MVP there too, but you can also get to Kawhi, you can get to Paul George. And there's a logic to it. On DraftKings though, more often than not, you're just benefited from getting Luka in a utility spot. And then also he has to have like a really big outlier day captain to sort of make it make sense and have the value plays that work. I'm not going to rule Luke out entirely, but I do think being with the field or under the field is the move here. And I think taking your stabs on Kawhi and Paul George would be the most appealing, but I also don't hate going to some of the other guys. Boban is a very cheap play. You can get there. Marcus Morris, we saw have some upside. Nick Batum. I think cycling through a bunch of those guys is to me the best captain approach. And it's the same for me on any showdown slate, but I think today in particular where people are going to see that big Luka day, maybe Luka just has a pretty good day today where he's needed as a utility play, but might not be needed a captain.
Well said. Yeah. I mean, I think more often than not, the problem is it's again, you have to try to separate. It's not to say just, results don't matter, but there's going to be games when you're dealing with guys this talented where Luka just blows the field away. And then you're like, why didn't I, like, he's the best player. Why didn't I just put him at captain? But you have to take a long-term view with that. Yes, it works out at times, but there's so many other times where it's more beneficial to save that salary on DraftKings, use a handful of different captains. You have him in utility, so you're getting exposure. And that's really when you're talking about taking down these tournaments, how I would do it. So I would probably look to one of the big two for the Clippers, whether it's Kawhi or Paul George. I want to throw this out there. Now, this is extremely risky, and there's really not a ton to back him up in this series. He's been non-existent at times, and then he showed flashes. I think that Porzingis, if the Mavericks are going to win tonight, could have a big game. They really need him to have a big game. And with Luka, obviously going to be, the priority of that defense. I'm not saying that they're going to do something radical to stop him, but I think Porzingis will have opportunities tonight. And if he gets going, particularly from three or whatnot, I could see him having a bigger game than he's put out so far in these five. He's been, average at best. And for the Mavericks tonight, if they're going to close it at home, I think Porzingis is a really under the radar captain that you could get aggressive with.
And lastly, Ben, are there any ways to get different with your lineup constructions?
I mean, you can always leave some money on the table. It's a little tougher with NBA because you really need the salary at times. I'm not saying zero it out, but I think, again, with captain specifically, that's always going to be unique if you change it up and you don't go to Luka and you don't go to the obvious pay down option. So you have those opportunities, always looking in terms of, we talk about this with the NFL as well. A lot of people try to balance it out in terms of like 3-3, 4-2. If you go onslaught and you get a blowout game, that can be an opportunity, a 5-1 of one of the teams. If you have a line that maybe they just crush them, maybe the Clippers respond, or maybe Dallas absolutely steamrolls them at home. I think those are the type of ways that you can leverage. You rule out a lot of teams that aren't going to do that right off the bat. And then if your plays hit, you're really competing against so many less teams overall.
Yeah, I think that's definitely the best way to approach it holistically. And I would say for this particular slate as well, just trying to make sure you're getting the ownership product down a little bit, whether it be taking that low owned captain, whether it be putting in a guy who's just going to be projected for under 20% ownership. I'm just trying to find the ways you can. Like, it's still a decent likelihood that the winner today will be chopping it up with a certain portion of people, but I think that does decrease your odds of having that, and and sort of at least limits the amount of people you will be chopping with, where you don't really want to be like, even if it is a 1,000-person split today for first place, and I'm not sure that's necessarily going to to happen for the slate, but just as an example, that happens enough times. Like, it's going to suck for the most part. But also, like, if you aren't in that 1,000 person chop, that also sucks. But I'd rather be in better positions to take a 5-person chop than be a part of the 1,000 person chop. And I think that's something with showdowns that it's the downside. It's why a lot of people who do max out tournaments, like I don't normally 150 max showdowns. I usually do the 20 maxes for those. Today I'll be doing the 150 max. And I definitely have some apprehension. I've heard from enough top players of just how, it is sometimes tough to profit there because you can get first place and still end up, netting like 1,200 on the day. But I do think in this spot, I'm hoping to get creative enough. And I think that's the main thing is just you get Luka less at captain. If you have Luka at captain, take a 1% guy, take a 5% guy. Just definitely find ways to get those little bit of slivers of lower ownership in the mix just to get with less people.
Great stuff. We're now going to head over to No House Advantages prop or not. Before we do, Ben, really quickly, because I have ADD. Did you redo your background? No. Okay. I was like, where'd the Whalers pennant go? Did it move up higher?
I did actually shift. So I moved.
Okay.
I used to have an owl picture behind me, my good luck owl, and he is gone temporarily. I'm shifting a couple things around. I brought up Secretariat, who's
I was going to say, who's the horse? Okay.
Yeah, Secretariat.
Wait, is the owl gone because he was no longer good luck?
Yeah, I've been, we need to just change the mojo a little bit. He'll be back. Shout out to Pat Mayo, who he is the reason I bought that owl when I was in Colorado. But yeah, we're changing the background a little. We're going to get things back in order though. Should
I change my background? Should we all change our backgrounds? I don't know.
I was actually eyeing some ways up to do it for myself because, like, I have a little bit of spending money to throw in if I want to do it. Or
someone won big last week.
Yeah, I know, man. Spags, you're all at 150 max. Changing
money bags.
Background, easy game, easy life.
Well, I've also had a floating shelf for I think quite possibly 6 months now. It's been sitting in the box over here. That I'm like, I'm very much a commitment phobic person, as you may have guessed from, if you've watched the shows for years, you can hear my dating life. And then finally now figured that part out, but still the case with like things behind me where like, I don't know what I want to have behind me. Like, do I always want to have a money hat behind me? Do I want to have Puppet Lindquist behind me? Do I want that at all here? Like, what am I going to do? And then the whole sheer wealth of choice kind of squeezes me. And I'm just like, well, fuck it. I'm just going to do nothing and keep doing the exact same thing. That's where we landed ultimately.
It's clearly working for you. So I would just stick with it.
I say for you, Kayla. Ben, who needs that Ben background, that fancy ass Ben background? Actually, one funny thing, a guy who we've had on the contrary before, who people know in the industry, Davis Maddock, I learned the other day because he did a stream with my pal Pete Overs that his background is actually just like a picture. Like, it's not like, it looks like it's stuff hanging on a wall, but it's just like a background. Hilarious. Like, and that threw me for a real loop because he touched it and it went like, woo. And I was like, what is this trickery? And I didn't know people were doing that. We're that next level with it. But Davis, has been a pro, has been doing this for a while, but definitely a lot of people are doing some weird shit with their backgrounds that I'm not with at all.
All right. Since you brought it up, Ben, did you want to ask Spags about Puppet Lindquist while we're here?
No, I saw Puppet Lindquist once in action, and I think it's fair to say maybe once was enough or too much. But Puppet Lindquist, yeah, he made an appearance. Spags, was that just you and me?
He made one, on the show where Kayla dropped off.
Yes.
Yes, he was there. So I got to experience that. I didn't know what was going on. And now, Spags, I learned yesterday there's pirates involved in the show at times. So
Pirate parlay of the day, yes.
It gets a little dangerous when I'm not on.
I mean, I don't want to kill the mystery here, but Eric does the run sheets Monday through Wednesday. Then when I was doing Thursday and Friday, I would do them those days. Now we have Eytan doing them on Thursdays, and then I do them on Friday. But I didn't choose the Puppet Lindquist bit. Eric put it on there, said to do it. So like, if he's going to say, hey, do Puppet Lindquist, how am I going to deny the man who inspired, who I don't even know the full character arc here, but maybe he is Puppet Lindquist. I feel like that hasn't been fully established in the narrative, but he put it on this thing, same thing with the pirate one. And I support Eric getting out there his creativity. And if I'm going to get credit for the good things, I'll certainly take it. But Puppet Lindquist also, by the way, nailed his picks. I just want to be completely right. He got the Utah blowout, and he got Tobias Harris and Ben Simmons being absolute lock plays. So I don't know that we need more Puppet content on the channel, but I feel like, maybe Puppet Lindquist deserves a show, maybe a shot at a show, maybe just a one-off show. I think it wouldn't be the worst usage of my hours.
I think we need to keep Puppet Lindquist around. That's just my personal opinion.
Yeah, but like sporadic. Like he can't be here every day. If he's with me every day and I'm just doing shows like that,
that'll get old. Yes,
I've gotten mad. I think it's really like that would be. But if it's here and there, like I'm just like fun crazy. Like I'm like woo, like wacky fun. Here we go. It's Pee-wee's Playhouse.
Oh my gosh, we're gonna get back to the NBA here for No House Advantages prop or not. Here are some of No House Advantages props of the day for key players. Guys, do we like the over or under on them, and how many points would you assign? We've got Ivica Zubac over under 4.5 rebound Spags.
So this is one that I do think comes with a little bit of risk because Zubac played a lot more minutes last game, but it was sort of to keep the Clippers from going very big again with Boban or even some of the other centers they had, and then kind of force the Mavs to play small. I think that to me is sort of the thing with Zubac that comes with a little bit more risk. But the minute projection we have right now, this does look like one of the better bets on the board for no house advantage to me because you're absorbing a little bit of risk for just this has to happen. I know Ben talks about this a lot, and we always quote Ben on it. I think across all the shows, we always quote Ben on the relying on one contingency or two contingencies. That's just not the bets you want to make. But do you think Zubac in this spot, like the way that we're going to perceive it now, probably Boban starting, probably does mean that Zubac comes in fairly early, then Boban gets scared off the floor. And that's just the way it goes. So I think it's a strong prop, but to me, because you're absorbing some risk and you can only place 6 props today on the board. So it's a 6-pointer be the max. This one to me is probably a 3-pointer, I think, but still one of the better bets according to Awesemo with a 84% chance of hitting.
Yeah, I think I'm a little more confident in it just because it's funny. It's one of those situations. It's not what I think they should do, but I think it's what is going to happen. And when you look at the books, it's up to 5.5 minus 139 across the industry. So you're stealing a lot of value here when you're talking about 4.5. And of course, it's just yes or no. So I'd say I don't know if it's a 6-pointer, but yeah, 3, 4, or 5, certainly in the upper half of the card. And I do think it does go ultimately lands over.
Spags, Eric in the chat called you a rich minimalist, and truer words have never been spoken.
Oh, that's EMac too. You're calling him Eric. I feel like you have not had the pleasure of doing an EMac show, Kayla, but I think one day you should. But I'm neither rich nor a minimalist, really. If you look at the other side, you have a gigantic TV, and I do wish in hindsight that I had gotten the 4 TV set.
Brag.
Like, that's the one like where you're living big, where you have like different games going on. I feel like I'd be a real DFS pro then.
Is that a subtle shot at me? Because I have 3 TVs in my.
Oh, do you? I didn't even know that.
Oh,
I never seen that. I have
He's
that
a doctor. That's why.
Yeah, sure. There it is.
Must be nice.
It's not that nice. It's funny. I have these 3 TVs, and there are so many times where I flick back and forth between 2 games on one TV, and then it hits me that I can just turn on one of them on the other screens, and I don't know why I don't do that. I don't utilize it nearly as much as I thought I would.
Okay, so that's the thing, is I think I would use it like every day because I usually watch things on my laptop, and my laptop becomes a second screen, and then I'll go to MLB The Show, sock some dingers, and have the game right here. But like if I had it right there next to me, it'd be just the perfect, just like a real baseball player. You're at bat, and then you're just watching another sport at the same time. That's just like the pros.
Yeah, I mean, I get Sleepless in Seattle on one TV, you got Mail on the other, and I can still watch my game. So that's really where it comes into play. But other than that, not as cool as you think it would be.
All the Nora Ephron greats. Wow. That would be my dream. All right. Next, we've got Patrick Beverley over under 7.5 assist Ben.
Under is apparently the move here by a lot. Yeah, points and assists just not going to happen. Beverley is someone that's really a non-factor right now. I'll keep it as simple as that. You got to make sure that he's playing and whatnot, but it's hard to think this is someone that's going to get a ton of minutes tonight.
He's basically been excised from the rotation. I think there was a report on the last game that Ty Lue basically had to sit down with him and had to tell him, because he's been a team leader and he's a bulldog and all these things about him, but he's been getting outplayed by Reggie Jackson. He's been getting outplayed by Rondo. He definitely just doesn't have a spot, but he should see a little bit of court time too. And it doesn't matter either way because he'll be active for the game. So if he's active, the prop will be good to go and no house advantage. So this one is 100% chance of hitting the under. It looks like from Awesemo. I don't know how that changes barring an injury to Jackson or Rondo. And on this spot, I think that's probably your 6-pointer today on no house advantage.
All right. Sorry, in the chat. Josh Richardson, over under 10.5 points plus rebounds plus assists bags.
This is another one that it does seem like the minutes shouldn't be there for him. Josh Richardson, one of those guys that you would think would kind of earn more minutes because he is a rangy wing who can play defense, but his scoring's been bad. They've been playing him less and less minutes. He was a starter during the season. Now he's basically a guy coming off the bench who they don't want to play many minutes at all. And I think in this spot, Josh Richardson looks like another good under, probably not quite as good of an under as Patrick Beverley, but there's really no reason to play him based on what he's done this year and what he's done this series. So Richardson at this point, probably a 5-pointer for me as an under on no house advantage.
Yeah, I mean, I'll put it like this. He doesn't even have a prop up on most of the books, and that shows you where he's at in the rotation. So, in the playoffs tonight, it's hard to think that he, barring an injury or something really unforeseen in terms of a massive blowout, this is going to be up there with the Beverley prop.
All right. And as always, don't forget to play on No House Advantage, our sponsor, who is taking a different spin on daily fantasy sports by offering player prop contests across the NBA, MLB, NFL, and PGA for cash prizes. This exclusively peer-to-peer fantasy sports platform levels the playing field It makes it easier for you to win real cash compared with your traditional DFS sites. The best part is you can join for free today. Just download the No House Advantage app and use promo code Awesemo to receive a first match deposit bonus of up to $20 for new signups. Be your friends, not the house. Win big with player props today. Was someone chuckling?
Maybe Tyler. I feel like Tyler's always laughing at my
antics.
Oh,
I was like, did I say something? Okay.
Tyler's always getting great joy over there while producing us. It's really, why does he even get paid? He's just having such fun doing these shows.
All right, it's time for one of our favorites around here, the Dr. Ben Rasa prop bet of the day. I don't know why I just sang. Ben, you are now at 20-9 after CJ McCollum missed his over of 21.5 points by a half point. Ben, how does it feel to lose this close of a bet? Mate cleared it easy.
Yeah, it sucks. And originally that said what I actually believe. Spags, if you were on the show, it would have found a way to push over that prop last night. He had real, like, I was virtually, so he had 19 points at the end of the third, and the Blazers needed every point they could get in the fourth. He had ample opportunities, and he had one bucket. So really disappointing, just a disappointing game from the Blazers altogether. Lillard was kept in check, and that was really helpful because I did short his points. But CJ McCollum, that was one I really thought that he should have pushed over, and that's all you can do. You take the swing and miss. We're going to rebound today.
We're going to rebound. So tell us all about your Dr. Ben Rasa prop bet of the day, Ben.
Yeah, this one is this is a weird one, honestly. It's more of like a gut feel. I talked about Porzingis earlier. I do think he has a pretty big game and more opportunities than he's had, particularly from three tonight. Just a product of seeing that Luka is going to draw a ton of attention. And when the Mavs are at their best, of course, they're so dangerous from three. So Porzingis hasn't been taking a ton, but it's the kind of guy, when he makes them, he tends to take more, and he should have opportunities tonight. I think the minutes will be secure, and the price -122 out there. That's good enough. It's really a price driven one. I think this is more sitting in the upper, 135, 140 across various books. So I found kind of a low hanging fruit line. Going to roll with it and hope Porzingis at least give me the attempts. Like I said last night with McCollum, you give me the volume, I'll live with the results. So hopefully he takes, 5+ threes tonight, and that should be good enough to give me a chance.
Yeah, I would say, to me, I haven't projected for 2.33 pointers. I have the most faith in Porzingis, really haven't all year long for the most part. Just one of those guys that does not often end up a play for me. But I do think, too, what you're saying here, like Luka's going to get more attention today, if it's even possible to get more attention. But based on the results he had last time, there's going to be more attention dedicated his way. And Porzingis was basically standing outside the 3-point arc all game last time out, watching everything happen. So, and he was also in foul trouble, too. So I think that's another part to consider. But he was so not involved, but he was where you need to be to hit a 3-pointer, just standing there hanging out. Basically in the front row of the crowd. So I think in this spot, him being out there, it seems like a good over to take, in the hopes that you just get some positive regression on a guy who they need to do things just to win or even be competent in this game. And also, I feel like now seeing the run sheet, I don't know what Ben changed. I put in the segment like, hey, like, Ben, you didn't win the bet because Spags was on the show yesterday.
Yeah, I didn't change that.
Oh, so something changed.
I was all about that.
I was wondering, did Kayla have a stroke while reading that? But I looked at it and it was like, oh no, it's just that you were reading it and it made no sense. And I just had to say, I didn't change it. If Ben didn't change it, I don't know what happened there.
Is that, yeah, I was like, this doesn't make sense, but I'm reading it anyway.
I put in there like, yeah, like, oh, like you would have hit it yesterday if Spags were on the show, and I don't know where it went, but it's tripping me out because, like, I don't, if Ben didn't change it, and I know Kayla doesn't change stuff usually, or does on her end on your own sheet if you do. Like, I don't know what happened there, but it's a great
I'll have to go back and look.
We're getting sabotaged. Maybe Eytan is jealous of the fact that I said, hey, you would have won with me on the show yesterday. This starts the feud the world's been waiting for, me versus Eytan. All
right, Ben, best of luck. We'll check in with you next week to see how you did.
Yeah, that's what I forgot. It's Friday. Go ahead. Yep.
Yeah. So we have to forget about it for a week. So you're clear. All right. Good dog, bad dog. Here we go.
The dog's having some issues.
All right, Spags, give us your good dog.
My good dog for the day is, I think, going to be the Dallas Mavericks. Not that there are a lot of choices in the NBA field, but I could have gone to MLB here. But I'm going to take them just because I think there's a chance they win this one. I think people will assume that the Clippers are going to win it. I think it's the likelihood, given the fact they're also a Vegas favorite here by 3 points on the road. But I think we saw yesterday that sometimes that's just not right. And even teams that are playing well, like Portland, where like Lillard had a good game, McCollum had a pretty good game, Powell's having a decent game, Covington was having a monster game, and they still lost that one. I think there's something here to it that people just keep assuming like this is a game 7. And, granted, we're not having a lot of those this year, if any, but I do think in the spot that there's a decent chance here that Dallas wins this one. And I wouldn't mind taking them as a money line bet, just the hedge against the public here and what seems like everybody's treating as a lock if the Clippers winning it.
I certainly don't mind the Mavericks. I'm going to go to tennis real quick. French Open. We've got some really sharp guys in our Slack with that. I'm going to go with Sloane Stephens tomorrow. She's really found a resurgence. She's playing great. Plus 165 in her match. I think she's more of a toss-up. So I'm going to bet a little French Open in the morning, and Sloane Stephens is definitely going to be on the card.
Love it. Love it. Ben, give us your bad dog.
Bad dog. I'm going to go tomorrow with the Bucks. I don't think they get off to a great start in that series. The Nets too much firepower. So I hope Milwaukee can give them trouble, but I think ultimately the Nets just outscore them and go up 1-0 in that series.
I think my bad dog is going to be Houston going against Toronto in Major League Baseball today. I do think that Houston in the spot, certainly a team that we know can hit in a bunch of different situations, but they're also getting a big park upgrade. Toronto not in Florida anymore, but still going to be a team that's going to be playing in a park that's much better than what Houston normally plays in. So in the spot, to me, I go into Houston hoping they can win it outright against, decent matchup against Hyunjin Ryu. I think not a great one, but one that's good enough. So take a good team here who's not, getting a little bit nickel and dimed here on runs.
And very quickly in our last minute here, Spags, give us your make or break and your fade of the day.
My make or break will probably be playing less Luka than the field at captain, hoping that works out. And I think my fade of the day will be, it's a tough one with a short NBA slate because for a showdown, you have to play pretty much everybody. But I think trying to get less Tim Hardaway Jr. seems like the move. He's projected for 40% ownership. He's been in the rotation. There is certainly some lineups I'll have him in ones where I think Luka isn't in particular, or Luka's just a utility play and not a captain. But I think he's a play that'll end up overowned because of people just wanting to go and get different. And Hardaway could easily just, crap the bet as he does sometimes.
I like it. That's perfectly in line with me because I want Porzingis to kind of take some of those opportunities. And Tim Hardaway Jr. has been that kind of Robin to Luka. And I think that Porzingis could step up tonight, and it'll come at the expense of someone like that. So I'm perfectly in line. Hopefully the Mavericks show up tonight.
Absolutely. That is going to do it for us today on the tip-off. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks to Spags and Dr. Rasa for your insight today, fellas. This was fun. As always, friends, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. The MLB Deeper Dive and Live Before Lock are coming your way next on the same stream, so stay tuned. I'm Kayla Knierim. We'll see you guys next week on the tip-off. Have a great weekend.
right, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are around the planet. We welcome you into another deeper dive here, and we're going to have to go as deep as humanly possible on a 15-game slate. You do the math, that's not much time per game, but as you know, some games have a little more appeal than others. Now, here's what we have for you. Again, a gigantic slate, all brought to you by No House Advantage. We're going to tell you about that. Jump in right now. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, what are you waiting for? If you haven't, then you will find out about all the great opportunities that we have from you here on the Awesemo Plus package and platform as well. We want you to make sure you like and share. You can hit that share button and push it all over social media and tell the world about another gigantic deeper dive. Now, here's the best news of the day. It's a 15-game slate, and you're not going to hear much from me at all because we have not one, but two. The boss is in the house. Max is in the house. You can follow both at DFS Max, at Awesemo DFS for Alex. Awesemo, of course, as the majority of you know him. And look, gentlemen, we appreciate it as far as the cavalry coming in to pull a reference that I'm sure Max will get. It's like Game of Thrones where Jon Stark is dead and all of a sudden you see the cavalry coming in to save the day. So we have a gigantic, how do we approach this? Alex, Max, let's just look at this big picture here, because as you know, we're going to have to go through pitcher by pitcher, game by game, and approach the stacks as well. But Alex, really from the big picture with such a huge slate, what are you looking for as far as trying to take advantage?
Well, it depends a little bit on the slate. Today's is really interesting because we have this one team, Oakland, that has by far the highest offensive potential playing in Coors. So they're kind of lapping the field as far as the potential tonight. And then there's about 10 to 15 teams that are all coming in about average. So it's going to be pretty much anyone's guess which one is going to have that 10 plus run output tonight. So that's what makes it so fun in MLB DFS is there's a lot of different ways you can approach today.
Max, your kind of general thoughts as well?
Yeah, I mean, for me, like I always just caution people that on a 15-game slate, no one really is as chalky as you would think on a smaller slate. Like yesterday, we only had 8 games. There was a whole bunch of like 40% chalk. That's not going to happen today, even with Oakland. So, like, I just don't like fading anyone on a slate like this simply for ownership's sake, just because there's so many games. People are going to go a bunch of different ways. And it's also a perfect slate to MME, just because you can get a whole bunch of different options there. For a guy like me that plays the high-stakes 3 max, because I feel like I never get on the stack that goes off. But for MME, this is a perfect time.
All right, so let's look at this. We have, again, not a terrible amount of time per game, but we have the feel for it, or generally you two will have the feel for it as far as where we can get some deeper value as opposed to kind of just writing a game or maybe 2 off. So as we jump in, the first that we have on this slate, Miami at Pittsburgh, and just kind of looking at it, these are both going to be 2 really low cost pitchers. So depending on how you balance a Scherzer, a Snell on the slate, there may be an opportunity to work either one of these guys, Alex, in as a P2.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I'm
sorry. For Mitch Keller, we can start at 5,600
yes.
on, that's going to be a super low, I imagine, owned low cost as well. Just that matchup as well, Miami and Pittsburgh.
Yes. I'd say Miami, they looked a little bit stronger to start the year, but the lineup they're rolling out today is very weak, below average in getting on base and power, and above average in strikeouts. And then you throw Pittsburgh, I'd say the weather today, 80 degrees, leans slightly towards hitters, but overall a very good spot for Keller. Not a outstanding talent, but the price point definitely it clicks today because you can get a lot of good batters. So he looks like a pretty solid option.
Max, you looking at anybody here on the mound for this matchup here?
Yeah, I love Petit. He's like one of my priority plays today. I actually think Keller is going to be over-owned. I know I just said that nobody's going to be that chalky, but we have him projected for 20% and only 7% of being a top 2 pitcher. So that's like a guy that screams avoid to me. Plus his underlying stats are just not that good. But Petit's look great since coming up. double-digit swinging strikes in 3 out of the 4 games. His underlying stats are really good. Ex-Woba giving up 257, 5% walks, which you love to see for a young guy that's not walking anybody. Plus, Pittsburgh just doesn't have pretty much like any good hitters that scare you. So I think Potita is like one of my priority plays today, just way too cheap.
Yeah, to your point, I mean, Pittsburgh, we have really one of the bottom teams as far as a top stack, in Alex's top stack tool, and tell you all about everything that you could take advantage of if you're not already on the Awesemo Plus and beyond platform. So looking at it then, as we kind of look at it now from a stack standpoint, first and foremost, Pittsburgh clearly is going to be at the bottom there, but Miami, I wonder if there's any capability as well to kind of work in a stack there as opposed to just maybe staying away or looking at a couple of one-offs. Alex, start with you as far as that's concerned, really.
Yeah, I mean, Miami, it looks like the ownership's very low today, and it's hard to blame anyone because they really only have like 1 or 2 good players in their lineup today. But anytime no one's going to a team, especially when the pitcher is a little bit popular, like there is an opportunity there to get some leverage. But on a 15-game slate, I feel like you can do a lot better.
Is this one of these games where we're pretty much going to be looking at, look, Miami's kind of in that healthy middle chunk. But as Alex mentioned in the beginning, Max, Oakland is really going to be weighted heavy towards being the top stack. So this might be, hey, if you have an extra lineup, maybe go full contrarian on the bottom. But I don't even know if this game is even worth looking, as much as Alex said, a big slate, worth trying to get as deep as we possibly can outside of maybe a one-off or 2.
Yeah, my dogs are going crazy, but that just means that I like Miami today just because of the 20% ownership on Kayla. So I feel like you can get really nice leverage there. And Miami has some good players that are back here. Jazz is back again. The guy hits for some power. Corey Dickerson is back. He was out for a while. I like him. This park does suppress power, but it is 80 degrees in Pittsburgh, which is nice weather. So yeah, I don't mind a Miami stack. I think if I was Emma Ming, I would definitely go above the ownership that we have projected for them.
All right, let's move on now to a game with 2 guys on DK. They're going to be 10K plus. Max Scherzer is going to be a big chalk play, I imagine, for a lot of people coming up all over the crunchers. His new lineups are confirmed, but Scherzer across the board, whether or not you want to work Snell, and we'll get later there. But Alex, let's start with you and, look at not only Scherzer, but maybe if you combine what else you could be paying for as far as a heavy price, any interest in Zach Wheeler, who has been pitching pretty well for the Phillies, but really thoughts on Scherzer first, and then kind of looking at Wheeler, if it is possible as a cheaper pivot.
Yeah, I think you got a pitcher's duel here between Wheeler and Scherzer. The temperature and humidity, 75 and 80%, lean towards hitters slightly. So it's not like the conditions are great for this one. And then the matchups also, like neither team really strikes out a remarkable amount, just both a little bit under the league average. And both teams are a little bit stronger than league average in their stats. So a minus matchup on both sides. So, I mean, these guys are great pitchers, but I feel like they're not necessities on today's slate.
Just to back up our in-house meteorologist, Alex, I just got done walking the dog. Speaking of dogs, Max, so you're not the only one that has them in the background running around crazy. But I just got in from walking the dog, and I had to shower again for the second time in like 2 hours. The humidity it's crippling here. So it's warm, you're right, but it is ultra humid. So you can factor that in. That's not just Alex reading something off the weather.com. This is legit. Like I just lived this for the past hour and a half. So you could factor that in. I'm sure Max is probably a pretty big factor if you were not to say that you are, but if you were looking to maybe move away from Scherzer, knowing that he's going to be super owned, and even Wheeler as a possible quasi low cost pivot.
Yeah, I like Wheeler more just because of the $700 price savings and the fact that they project pretty much the same, but he carries like half the ownership. So for me, it's probably Wheeler. These lineups don't strike out much. You guys were talking about the weather. So yeah, that doesn't inspire a lot of confidence. but these pitchers are just so far above what we have with the rest of the slate. Just their strikeout rates, the xWOB was given up in the 200s. Both are striking out 36% for Scherzer, 31% for Wheeler. They don't walk anybody. They really don't give up hard contact. So it's hard for me to get away from these guys completely. But I do feel like getting the lower owned cheaper pitchers is going to be the key to winning the slate today.
Real quick, just to throw it back at you, Max, and then Alex as well. Looking in a FanDuel lineup with just the one pitcher, does that change your opinion on Scherzer? And maybe to your point, Max, about liking Wheeler to a lesser extent or greater extent to you, pardon me.
Yeah, I mean, Peralta is so cheap on FanDuel that I think he's like the clear chalky play there at 8,700. It just feels crazy for me to pay up like $3K more for Scherzer and Wheeler, where they're projected so close to what Freddie Peralta gives you. So for me on FanDuel, I would go Peralta in a one pitcher site.
Alex, any change on that with FanDuel?
Yeah. So I agree on FanDuel. The pricing on these guys is a lot higher, and that makes sense that Peralta is overall better play. The one thing I would say today is like these guys are good options, but there's no one guy. Maybe Peralta on FanDuel is a standout play, but there's no one guy that's really jumping out at me today. That's like you got to play him in pitcher. So what I probably do is start with my bats and then figure out how much money I got for pitcher, and then go from there.
Yeah, Scherzer just under 40%. I mean, we'll talk about Snell. We'll get to a couple of guys later on the slate. You mentioned Peralta as well, but I imagine that number for Scherzer on DraftKings, this is not FanDuel, so just to be clear, but I imagine that number is only going to go up. So that's probably also going to work as a deterrent. And the lineup is out, and we were expecting here in Philadelphia the possibility this morning of maybe the return, since he's eligible, for Bryce Harper. That ain't happening. So everybody can rest assured now that you might have to rely on Gene Segura for a couple of pops, which ain't going to happen, though. But let's look at this here. Now you have a lineup. Both of you guys brought up great points about just how difficult it is to strike this lineup out. So from a stack standpoint, Alex, looking at Washington and then to a lesser extent Philadelphia, is there any interest here knowing that you're really going to have to get around those arms despite the weather and despite what might be aiding you, difficult to K, you still have to deal with some pretty good arms.
For sure, yeah. I mean, on a 15-game slate, you don't have to settle for a tough matchup. So I'm just going to cross these teams off. Maybe you could do a one-off here or there with like Trey Turner or Soto because no one's going to be on them tonight because of the matchup. But it might not be worth stacking up the whole team.
Similar thoughts there as far as just working a stack. And again, there may be a one-off or two if you're looking at Reese or Soto as far as Philly, Washington, respectively, Max. But I don't know if there's a change. Maybe there's a risk here that you would take on a stack before looking at a one-off or two.
Yeah, I would have played Harper if he was in.
Yes.
But without him, I would definitely look at Philly more just because Scherzer is going to be chalkier. So we'll give you more leverage if you play like one of the Philly bats. I wouldn't stack either team. I totally agree with Alex. You just don't need to go there. But I would play like maybe a Brad Miller one-off or like a Herrera one-off, just hoping he runs into one and gives you a home run against a really chalky pitcher.
Yeah, it's costly across the board here. I mean, you're looking at right there, Turner 5,400 at the top through Real Muto 4,700. So yeah, absolutely. Why settle right when you're looking at so many across? All right, let's hit it third. We'll pick it up depending on what happens here between Cleveland and Baltimore. And again, we can start, of course, with the arms first and foremost, Alex. And looking at least Eytan, you have that locked in. Looks like Mejia as well with Cleveland. We've talked about from the first game, two super low-cost options. Well, that's what this is defined here. Is it too low or is it too low of a possible return, too high of a risk to play either one of these guys as a P2 in DraftKings?
I think you could try Eytan. He went 94 pitches in his last game 5 days ago, so that's a really good sign that he has upside. Now he's $4,600, which is the main reason you would think about him. Matchup isn't great versus Cleveland. They don't have a good lineup, but they also don't strike out. So for fantasy, about a little bit below average, and then the weather's not helping you out at all. It's 80 degrees. So I think Eytan, there's no real reason not to play him at 4,600, which usually at that price point, there's a bunch of red flags. I don't see any reason not to play him here.
Max, any interest on either of these guys as well, as far as just knowing that you're going to get a hell of a deal from a cost standpoint at the very least?
Yeah, I mean, he costs less than most hitters, right? So,
yes.
I mean, one of the reasons not to play him, to Alex's point, is that he's not very good. But other than that, it doesn't really make sense. Like, Cleveland is not a good hitting team. They don't strike out much, which is annoying. And Eytan isn't going to give you a ton of strikeouts anyway. So, yeah, I mean, it's never fun putting a guy named Keegan Eytan in your squad, but at the price that he offers you, it might make sense in some lineups for sure.
Yeah, I mean, better than Clay Aiken, right?
Yeah, better than Keegan Bradley. That's that too.
Tyler, I must have offended Tyler with that Clay Aiken shout. Is he from Texas? Like, did I just step over? No, he's from Raleigh. All right. So what are you talking about? No, I should be in good shape here. All right. Well, now we know that with these guys, especially mentioning Aiken just not being very good, there should be an opportunity to jump on and victimize one or both of these pitchers, and just kind of looking at where we have it on the top stacks. The available tool for you on the Awesemo Plus platform, $29.95 a week. That's it. It's simple. It's easy. Cleveland up there. Now, granted, Oakland is going to be the only team in double digits for Alex's top stack tool tonight. But then you start to get that meat where everybody from like that 5 to just that 4, and Cleveland is kind of right there in the middle of it. Baltimore a little bit lower on there. So let's look, Alex, at Cleveland. How much can you take advantage of this stack?
I think it's a solid one. So today, because there are a lot of teams in good but not great spots, you can kind of use a few different criteria. One, ownership. I mean, it looks like Cleveland isn't super popular today. The average player is about like 4%. And then the other factor I'm looking at is it a home versus away team? Away teams get you an extra inning when they're putting up big run totals. So that's definitely a factor working in Cleveland's favor. So I think this is one that you can make some solid lineups with.
Jumping on Cleveland, Max?
Yeah, and there's just not a lot of upside, though, for me. You know, the top of this lineup, like Cesar Hernandez, Ahmed Rosario, just not a lot of power. Jose Ramirez is really interesting, and Harold Ramirez. The two Ramirez guys are really interesting as one-ups for me. But other than that, just like nobody in here hits for any power. They don't really steal bases. I just don't see how a Cleveland stack wins a GPP. I don't mind one-offs from here, but Cleveland is not high on my priority list.
Yeah, a guy that's popping up at least for individuals for one-offs on the cruncher would be Wilkerson. So I don't know if you had anybody designed in your mind, Max, that you would look at as a one-off for Baltimore or really either one of these teams.
Yeah, I know. I like Harold Ramirez. He's a guy that actually does steal bases, doesn't strike out much, and does have like 500x slugging. His launch angle kind of stinks in the sense that he hits a ton of ground balls, but he does get on base. He hits 4th in the order. What is he priced at now? 3.3K. So that's really, really reasonable. So I like him. And from the Orioles side, I always like Santander hitting 3rd at 3.1K.
Yeah, he's actually coming up as now one of the top 6 guys, 5 right now. He keeps bumping up as we're crunching lineups. So any interest as far as a one-off maybe in the outfield there or somebody else we might have overlooked that you'd feel confident in even with a price point, Alex, in this game?
Yeah, when I am looking for a one-off, I'm looking for someone that makes a lineup possible that wouldn't otherwise be. So one guy I think you could consider is, oh man, now that I'm looking at this guy's stats, they're not looking good. But
wait, I'm curious, who are you looking at?
I'm looking at this guy, Owen Miller. He's only 2,300, batting 6. That's just a good spot in the order on a team that's projected to do pretty well. And he's 2,300, got the positive platoon split. So If he showed up in my lineup, I wouldn't hate it. But he doesn't have any power or stolen base upside from what he's displayed so far.
He has a 177 X slugging and a negative 4.5 launch angle.
Well, that's why it's 2,300.
Exactly. Actually, Stevie Wilkerson is probably the same play, but a guy that will actually steal bases. So
at 2,000 on DraftKings, Max. So even cheaper.
Yeah, I mean, he doesn't hit for any power either, but he has shown the ability to steal at least this year.
All right, now Max can officially geek out because we've hit that Red Sox Yankees portion of the program here. And again, just a reminder, what we're using, everything here, all of the tools, Alex's tools here on Awesemo.com, all part, of course, of the Awesemo Plus package. And it's just so easy. $29.95. Access to everything, all of the premium content across the board. Today, the free tool for you is the top pitchers, NBA player rankings, the NHL player rankings, and MMA top fighters. Want to get ready for the weekend there. But really, across the board, it's $29.95. It's easy. It's simple. If you'd like to streamline it for the MLB package, well, the MLB DFS is $15.95, and that's the Awesemo Plus MLB weekly package. You get everything you need from the MLB standpoint. But really, I mean, look at the difference. $29.95 for everything. And we see this all the time. NBA players come, pop in the chat. Hey, it's first time, second time. I'm new to this. As the playoffs are only one NBA game. Look at the difference, right? One NBA game tonight. You're stuck in captain mode versus 15 juicy baseball games. This is where you want to be. This is exactly where you want to be, right?
Got Red Sox, Yankees. Come on.
What's the NBA? I don't even know what that is anymore.
Right.
I love it. Absolutely. You go where the money is, Alex, right? That's what I heard a long time ago, and you're the living proof of it. All right, so let's look now. We've got the Yankees hosting the Red Sox. Max, this is your squad here. So let's start with the pitchers. Of course, you've got you've got King hosting at 6,300, 8,500 on the flip side there. But, just looking at now the first time in this matchup, or the slate really, outside of the Phillies and Nats, which was just too much. But now we start to get into what I would imagine be justifiable P1 if you were to pivot from these high-priced guys, in case you're thinking of a pitcher's duel in this regard.
Michael King's the worst.
I was trying to bait you.
As a Yankee fan, I'm telling you, man, this guy is awful. He wouldn't even be pitching if Kluber wasn't hurt. But I miss the Yankees of old with like the $200 million rosters. We wouldn't be starting a Michael King. What is going on here? Anyway, it's bad. The matchup's really good for the Red Sox. I like the Red Sox stack a lot at Yankee Stadium. So yeah, definitely not on King. Evaldi is a really good real life pitcher and not a very good DFS pitcher, just because he gets a bunch of ground balls, not a lot of strikeouts, doesn't induce hard contact either. So, for me, it's a Red Sox stack here, and that's pretty much it.
Yeah, Red Sox stack, definitely going to be looking at as far as the top stack tools, Alex. Beyond the stack, if you're riding it, are you looking at the very least, if you're not stacking Boston, at a couple of one-offs?
Yeah, I mean, I think they got some really good price players for taking as one-offs. Danny Santana, obviously. He's popping up as one of the most popular players on DraftKings today because he's leading off for 2,400 in a good matchup versus Michael King. So he's top of the list as far as cheap guys, but super popular. You might be better off just finding a guy that's not as good, that's not going to be really high owned.
And just real quick before we keep moving things here, on the Yankee side, staying away from the stack, I get it, but you still have some pretty big names in this lineup. Are you even tempted to throw a one-off in here, Max?
No, just because Evaldi is like a ground ball guy, and he's really good against right-handers, and all the Yankees right now have are right-handed hitters. So, if you look at his splits here, he's allowing 326 WOBA, just a ton of ground balls, 56% ground balls, and 19% hard hits against righties. So if I'm not playing a righty, am I playing Odor or Brett Gardner? No. So the Yankee lineup it's a really, really bad matchup for the Yankees here. I don't know how they project for 4.6 runs. I would take the under in a second.
Houston at Toronto, another good matchup here from a pitching standpoint and reflected as far as where the stacks are respectively as well. Greinke, the lower option as far as cost is concerned. We can factor in ownership as well, Alex, but any interest starting there as far as a P2 or even as a possible P1 pivot on DraftKings?
Greinke really just isn't that good anymore, to be honest. 19% K rate. And then, okay, so Toronto, we have to remember they moved to Buffalo.
Yep.
So
good point.
That's definitely a better pitcher's park than Dunedin, at least. But probably not enough to make me want to take a pitcher that's going up against the Blue Jays. They're just a really solid team. So, Ryu on the other side looks a little bit more appealing, but he's expensive, and Houston is one of the worst strikeout matchups in the league. So I'm just kind of priced off him today.
Yeah, 10-2 on DraftKings, Max, for Ryu, and knowing, of course, that if possible, right, take advantage of the change of scenery. We've got the total at 8.5 on Odd Shopper, where we go, where everything is done for you. It's the easiest place to go and know that you're going to get the best odds around. So looking at that total combined with the cost of Ryu, is there any concern maybe there about staying away from him, or is that maybe a little more appealing with some circumstances in his favor?
No, I think you just fade the whole game, to be honest, on a 15-game slate. The pitchers are too expensive and the lineups they're facing are too good. And they don't really offer too many strikeouts. Alex already mentioned the 19% K rate for Greinke, and then 25% for Ryu. Doesn't inspire a ton of confidence either, going up against the team that strikes at least in the league. So yeah, like for me, it's just pretty much fade everything, because the hitters, like on the Astros, do look a little bit underpriced, but Ryu just doesn't give up too much power. I don't know. If I was playing anybody, I could see putting in Mlb Dfs in here at 2.8K against Ryu. But that's really it for me.
No, fair enough. Look, good news is that we can keep it moving.
Yeah, for sure.
We don't have to go back and stretch out a 4-game slate where you've just essentially killed a game in 26 seconds. So that's the beauty of tonight, and we'll do just that now. And you talk about two big pitching matchups. These, outside of Scherzer, you've got 2-3, Urias, Anderson there as far as 11K, 10-9 on DraftKings respectively. So Max, let's start with you. We'll move it back to Alex afterwards. As far as just looking at these two guys, clearly the record, you can look at ERA down to WHIP, K through 9, where what you're getting is definitely going to be as advertised. Maybe there's a move away because of cost, or maybe simply you don't trust a lineup as far as going up against, if it's the Dodgers going up against Anderson.
Yeah, I mean, for the pitchers here, I think it's another one where I just don't want to pay these prices for pitchers facing really two good hitting squads in 83-degree weather with a really nice humidity in Atlanta. So for me, I don't think like an 11K Ryu or 10.9K Anderson make much sense. And our pitcher tool kind of tells you that as well. Like the ownership on Urias looks really nice at 1.9%. But 11,000 is so much money. And he's going to be facing Acuna, Albies, Riley, Swanson. Like all these guys hit for power. There's really no breaks in this lineup. Even at the bottom of the order, Contreras has been hitting well, and Adrianza and Herrera just don't strike out. So for me, I don't want the pitchers. I do think the Dodgers squad is a really interesting stack option against Ian Anderson. I love Anderson as a pitcher, but he has been giving up a little bit more hard hits this year, 40%, xWOB of 324, slugging of 414, and just couple that with a road team and a really, really good road team with a ton of good hitters. Cody Bellinger's back, hit a grand slam, I think his first or second game back. Yeah, so for me, I think the Dodger stack is really interesting here.
Yeah, Alex, just looking at it from a stack standpoint and then taking advantage, maybe picking a couple of one-offs, knowing that it's just going to be difficult as high cost as Max laid out. These two pitchers are across both sites. You're still going to have to deal with ridiculously difficult lineups. So just look at the stack element first, and then maybe there is a side that you like picking a couple of one-offs from more.
Yeah, I'm a little bit surprised that the Dodgers are popular to some extent today. Anderson is a pretty solid young pitcher. I guess if they can get past him, what Max is saying about the weather can come into play, where they'd be in a good spot to play against the back of the bullpen for Atlanta. So I think they're worth taking some shots on, but pretty high owned, surprisingly. Um, Atlanta, they have a pretty talented lineup, but the cost is up there compared to the run total today. So I'm a little bit hesitant to go to them.
Same thing with the Dodgers. I imagine it's not like you're going to get much break on that end either.
For sure, yeah. I don't mind paying up on expensive bats if they're in a good spot. So this does seem to be one that could work. One guy that I might want to leave off my stack is AJ Pollock, batting 8th. I just feel like he's too cheap. Like he's going to be kind of in everyone's optimization, and you might be better off just going all out trying to buy the expensive guys.
All right, we'll move on now to our next game on the slate here, Tampa and Texas. And we could start with Kyle Gibson, and looking at his cost might be reflected of coming off injury, the IL, what have you now, sorry. Everything has changed across the board. 7,600 though, Max, on DraftKings. We know that as far as going up against Josh Fleming is going to be a significantly cheaper option, but now you have to deal with going up against these respective lineups. So I'm not sure if there's any interest in maybe sliding Gibson in as a P2 in a DK lineup today.
Man, this would be normally the portion of the program where I recommend Kyle Gibson, which I do every time he's on a slate. But coming off the injury has me a little bit worried about his pitch count. He threw 106 the start right before the injury, so he was really nicely stretched out. And this is a really nice strikeout spot against a Tampa team that strikes out, I think, 3rd in the league. Also, the roof was closed in Texas, and when the roof is closed there, it tends to play more like a pitcher's park than a hitter's park. So, yeah, Kyle Gibson has me torn. The price is really nice, but I have no idea how deep he's going to go in the game. So I'm not sure how much I'm going to get to him, but it's a really nice strikeout matchup for a guy like Gibson. And his underlying stats are actually really nice this year. xwOBA giving up of 284 and 37% hard hits. Those are really good numbers. He doesn't give up too much power. Does only strikes out 20%, but the swinging strike numbers are nice. And the Tampa lineup is going to boost that matchup.
7,600 Gibson, DraftKings. Alex, temptation at all to maybe slide him in?
I think you can do just as good for cheaper. So never a great strikeout pitcher. And Tampa, they are a decent matchup. So I'd just say it's the average spot, average price. Nothing to get too excited about.
These stacks are pretty much going to be super low owned as we have right now on the top stack tool, and just kind of looking at how you have them in a top stack percentage. It's going to be Tampa right there. But again, everything is centering around the idea that Oakland is going to be the most dominant force tonight across the board. And then the Dodgers will get to the Rockies in that game with Oakland as well. But just looking at this stack where you have it on there, there's some decent leverage with Tampa. The ownership is going to be super low, and they're not down by any means on this list and out of it, maybe in like that mid 2s to below as far as a percentage to really being like super boom on that standpoint, Alex. So just looking at the Tampa stack first and foremost, can you roll with that knowing that you're probably going to be more alone than not stacking Tampa?
Man, they are just so incredibly pricey today. I guess the sites must have thought the roof might be open, which would have been pretty appealing. But if it's not, then these guys are probably crossed up my list just because the lineup you can build around them is pretty bad.
Same thing, Max, as far as just now reflecting on the price. Look, for Tampa, and then also looking at it from a Texas standpoint, you might be able to sneak in a couple of guys if it's Davis at 2,500 for a one-off. But I wonder if just from the pricing standpoint for Tampa, and then looking at it the flip side with Texas about stacking.
Yeah, for Tampa, I don't know. I think DK glitched out, priced them all like they're playing in Coors. So I don't really get that part of it. Texas, also not interested in the stack. We can talk about Fleming. Like, he's a perfectly fine pitcher at 6K against a lineup that strikes out a bunch and is going to have 3 lefties going up against a lefty. So I don't mind Fleming at 6K at all. I really don't see myself going to any Rangers. If I went to anybody, it would be Adolis Garcia probably, or Chris Davis at 2.5K. Has been hitting home runs since he came back up, batting in the middle of that lineup. But also, they all strike out a ton. Fleming doesn't strike anybody out, but he's a ground ball guy. So you just hope he goes deep in the game. Unfortunately, like, Tampa just doesn't let any of their pitchers go deep. So I'm sure he's going to cap out at like 80, 85 pitches like they do with everybody pretty much. So Fleming's price is what has me interesting. But other than that, it's a pass.
Outside of Davis, Alex, you just start to look at other guys on Texas. And I assume you're kind of back to the point you made about Tampa, where you're just hitting this range of guys not being worth the price on such a large slate.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you probably want to limit yourself to the top 20 teams, and then Texas is one of the bottom 5, I think. So just no reason to go down this deep.
We got to remind you, of course, not only about the $29.95 weekly package here, Awesemo Plus, where you don't need to wait 1 day a week for the MLB top pitchers to be free like they are today. You can just jump in and get access to everything. It's that simple. The show brought to you by No House Advantage, and every program that I'm on, I keep trying to remind everybody that this is beyond simply the benefits of jumping the books and really taking advantage of the difference on lines. It's a fun and easy way to make money off of player props across the board. All things NBA, MLB, the NFL right around the corner, PGA, which is going on right now. You can see Max has his eye on Colin Morikawa. So all of the things happening around that you want to take advantage of from a player prop standpoint. We have over 500 player prop offerings on No House Advantage, and it's a great tool to use as well if you're looking at betting player props wherever you can legally around the country. And I'd use it for all of my radio and TV stuff here in Philadelphia as the guide, the tool. I'm not using anything else for player props except No House Advantage. And you always see the difference too, because you see, oh yeah, okay, 5.5. That's what that line is on NHA. And then you see the book and it's 6.5 or 7. And you realize that you've lost the value. So everything is all in there, and just use our promo code Awesemo, AWESEMO, for a free $20 first match deposit. It's that simple. It's easy. And I'm addicted to this, as all the things that are happening, because it's just such a key tool that I could use alongside my gambling, which take that for as much of an endorsement as possible. All right, Peralta. You mentioned Peralta in the beginning when we were way back at the start of this epically long slate, Max. So Freddie comes in at 10-4 now on DraftKings. You have a completely different option if anybody were to risk Matt Peacock at 6,400. So a big saver when it comes to cost. But let's start, Max, with your thoughts on Peralta, really for the cost and in really looking across the rest of this slate.
Yeah, I mean, Peralta is what, like your second best strikeout pitcher on the slate. 37% K rate, 249 x WOBA, x slugging of 292, doesn't really give up any power. Just a great pitcher all around. Struggles with walks at 10%. Arizona does not walk much, though, outside of Carson Kelly and Josh Rojas, the only guys in double digits in their walk rate. They also don't strike out much, which kind of mitigates how good the matchup is for Peralta. So I'm more interested in Fanduel, as I mentioned before, than I am on DK. But on DK, he does make a nice pivot off of the uber popular Scherzer. 23.6% ownership we have on him, where Scherzer's 39. I still think I prefer Wheeler at $300 more over Peralta, but those kind of guys are the two that I would pay up there for sure.
Yeah, how much exposure you see getting to Peralta tonight, Alex, knowing that Max laid out great advantages, especially if it's a FanDuel pivot, saving a couple of $100 from a Wheeler as opposed to a little more with Scherzer?
Yeah, I think Peralta is a good option. Arizona doesn't have a very scary lineup, but they don't strike out a ton. So I'm not kind of over the moon on him, but 8,700 for a guy that has a 37% K rate this year is pretty low on FanDuel. And there's also kind of a built-in advantage to paying down a pitcher that you can get better stacks. Still a little bit more favorable allocation of salaries. So I think Peralta is a very strong option on Fanduel. On DraftKings at 10.4K, I feel like that's a fair price, but there are quite a number of good pitchers in this range. So I think he's just one of the guys.
No love for Peacock coming off his second win of the season.
And no, yeah, no.
No. You want to echo
Peacock.
that sentiment, Max?
No Peacock at 6.4K.
Yeah. Is it
if
just
was
too much?
4.5 maybe. Like
Yeah.
I would look at it. But yeah, I mean, he's bad against lefties. Yelich is back. You know, they have Vogelbach, Narvaez, Shaw. I would much rather stack the Brewers, I think, here.
Well, let's look at that as far as stacking the Brewers. And, you know, Yelich is going to be the price there at 5,100, but you're under 4K on DraftKings for everybody else. So I wonder if it's worth a stack in that regard. Alex, start with you as far as this game is concerned from a Brewer standpoint. If it's worth a stack simply to pay up for Yelich, knowing that you're going to get under 4K for everybody around him.
Yeah, I mean, the Brewers are looking like a really solid option today, like just really cheap. Yelich, obviously a great player. The only thing is the ownership is very high on this whole team. So I guess you could do it. Just make sure you get a little bit contrarian with the other picks.
No one-offs for Arizona. I mean, top of that lineup, you're going to pay a little bit. One or two kind of high-priced guys, but there is some value, at least from a cost standpoint. Any interest, Max, there as far as, well, actually, Milwaukee first and foremost, part of me, as far as your thoughts on that stack, and then we can look at some one-offs.
Yeah, no, I like the Milwaukee stack simply because it's just a ton of power hitters now. They got Willy Adames, another power bat. Vogelbach is hitting second. So, yeah, I mean, I like them for power. Peacock's a ground ball guy. So it's kind of like rubber meets the road. Who's going to get through here? So it's usually not a stack I would recommend against the ground ball guy, but I do believe that they can hit for power here. And it's 85 degrees here. I think the roof is open. This park has been playing really small, like the last week since it got warm in Milwaukee. So yeah, I like the Brewers for home runs here as one-offs or a stack.
Are you paying up for Yelich as a one-off, Max?
No, just because I haven't seen the power I want to see from him. I know he had a home run the other day, but he's still hitting too many ground balls for me. His launch angle is only 0.5 so far this year. So it's not a guy I would pay up for, where I don't expect him to be hitting home runs unless he runs into one and gets lucky.
All right, White Sox, Tigers. Now we have, again, somewhat of a little bit of a discrepancy on cost. So, Alex, let's look at pitchers first and foremost. Keuchel a little bit less at 6,800. Turnbull up there at 8,300. Any interest in either?
Well, Turnbull has been a great pitcher so far this year. 2.8 xFIP. Of course, he had that no-hitter, which was pretty impressive. Matchup.
Look at the Detroit fan smiling as he says that.
The only thing, I just don't think he's worth 8,300. He's not a huge strikeout guy, and the matchup's a negative. So that's kind of cooling me on both the White Sox and Turnbull.
Max, any thoughts on either of the pitchers before we look at the bats?
Yeah, no, I totally agree with Alex. Turnbull's actually really good, has really good underlying stats. Better for real life than DFS, just because he doesn't strike out many guys. But it gets me off the White Sox stack, and I don't really want to pay up for him as well.
Any interest in Detroit? To start, Max, with you, we'll flip it back to Alex as well. But Detroit, I mean, just looking at the White Sox, you know what you're getting. But everybody, you'd have to get the Lamb in the lineup at the 7 spot before you're below 4K. So I imagine that the cost is going to be somewhat of a deterrent. Any interest on Detroit on the other side, just looking at the cost/value?
Yeah, for Detroit, for me, I mean, I never stack against Keuchel. Like, he's bad, like objectively very bad, but he just doesn't give up too much power. And the launch angle at 3.2 just means he's a ground ball guy. So, like, Detroit just doesn't have very many good hitters. Sorry, Alex. But I do like Eric Haas as a one-off. Guy they brought up at catcher that does have really nice power. So for me, it's an Eric Haas one-off, and that's pretty much it.
See, Alex can't say anything because you already preempted how bad your Yankees are tonight with King. So what's he going to say? You're like, come on, man. I already told you my Yankees are shit. Leave me alone.
I'm even wearing a red hat. So you know it's a bad day for the Yanks.
Fair enough. Any bats you could justify going with stacker one-offs, Alex?
Yeah, I mean, you can call me a homer, but I don't hate the Tigers here. Just the matchup is solid versus Keuchel. The weather, 83 degrees in Chicago. That's a positive, and the prices are low. There's no ownership on them, so it's not my least favorite option.
Fair enough. All right, so Luis Castillo, we've got Kim on the other side. Both of these guys, 7K plus, 7,300 for Castillo, Kim at 7K. Any interest, Max, looking at either one of these pitchers, especially as a P2 or maybe even as a possible pivot?
Yeah, I mean, I always love Castillo, but he's always chalky this year and has just been so bad. Only 19% K rate for a guy that throws 98 miles an hour just doesn't make any sense.
Wow.
I don't understand. Maybe it's a pitch mix. Maybe he's tipping his pitches. Something is off with this guy. And the Cardinals lineup is pretty good. Don't strike out much outside of Tyler O'Neill, who also has a ton of power, by the way. So, yeah, for me, I don't know. I think I could get to some Castillo in my MME builds, not in my 3-max builds, just because the upside is always there. Maybe he figured something out between the starts. The talent is there. The pitches are there. Just kind of has to get to who he used to be. And the price is really, really nice. That's pretty much it for me for Castillo.
Any exposure, Alex, to either of these guys? I imagine not on a FanDuel lineup, but maybe on a DK lineup?
I think Kim isn't the craziest option, I guess. Cincinnati, they do have some good strikeouts in their lineup. He's just not a great strikeout pitcher, though, so it's kind of in the mix. And Castillo just hasn't struck out guys at all this year compared to previous years. This isn't a stat where like you want to go back to previous years. You want to just look at this year pretty much. So 19%, that's just not going to cut it for me.
St. Louis kind of on the bottom half, if you will, of our top stack tool on Awesemo.com, but it's not an expensive stack. I mean, you're going to pay a little bit, right? Arenado just under 5K, but even Goldschmidt just over 4K. Any interest, Max, on a stack here with St. Louis? I know you were a little high on Castillo outside of the chalk factor, but anything on the flip side with the St. Louis stack?
No, maybe like a one-off here and there with a Tyler O'Neill or another guy with power. You know, like Edman and Carlson will steal bases, but they don't really hit for power. So it's really just Goldie and O'Neill. They don't strike out much. It's kind of like a stay away game for me. I love Jesse Winker, so he does have a lefty-lefty matchup, but the guy's probably going to win MVP this year.
All right. 4 games, and one of them, I imagine from an offensive standpoint, is going to take more time than the other simply because of the location. It is the only double-digit total we have on the board, obviously, in Colorado. Oddshopper.awesemo.com, where you get everything from team to player to future props available to you. So let's start here. And you've got still guys that are just 9K, 9.9, right? Montas Gray as well. I can't imagine that you're rushing, and Alex, will start with you, rushing to play a pitcher in Coors Field tonight?
Let me think on that one. Get back to you.
Okay, fair enough. Max?
No. Negatory.
Oakland at 13.3, and they've got just under a full 8-point lead on Alex's top stack tool tonight. So let's just start there, guys. I mean, there's no pitcher talk here. Let's just look, Alex, on the A's and maybe what a concern would be, I guess, if they're just super high owned.
Yeah, I mean, that's a huge concern in baseball. But all the factors are here. 88 degrees in Denver today is the highest it's been all year. Now, John Gray is a solid pitcher, so that is a slight negative. But I think the weather just makes up for any possible negatives. So I do feel like the ownership is kind of ridiculous. Like 19% aggregate ownership on DraftKings means about like 3 out of 10 lineups are going to be stacking the A's probably, which in baseball is a lot. So I do think you can find some other ways to go, but man, these prices are pretty enticing, and the park is pretty good. It's a really hard fade.
How much of a pivot can you work with the Rocky stack, Max?
Are you guys ready for my hot take of the day?
Yeah, we need like a video or some sort of we need some sort of imaging. They say on radio, like we need something here. I didn't realize we were building a segment. Yes, we're ready for it.
Rockies will score more runs and more DFS points than the A's today.
Let's go.
I believe in John Gray. I really do. The guy knows how to pitch at Coors. Only 33% hard hits. Oakland lineup it's good, but it's not great. I really wish McMahon was in this Rockies lineup. He's my favorite hitter on the Rockies, but Frankie Montas is bad. 480 x slugging, doesn't really strike many people out, 45% hard hits, 15-degree launch angle is exactly what you want to see for home runs and line drives. I don't think the guy can survive at Coors. So I think the Rockies are my favorite stack of the day today.
Wow. All right.
I'm not saying fade the A's. A's are a very good stack.
Sure. You just got them as the top stack. Now that's where we need the sound effect where it just sizzles, right? Like bacon on the pan as we move to the next game. All right. Ohtani here. There's going to be an obvious discussion, of course, now on the mound, not at the plate. So you give up his bat clearly, but 7,600 on DraftKings. Alex, any interest?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're going to need some mid-price pitchers. I think Ohtani is one of the better ones. Seattle is an up-and-coming team, so they're not that good right now. And he throws a lot of strikeouts. He throws a lot of walks. That's really the gamble is, will he be efficient enough to get you a good score? But I think it's a gamble worth taking.
Is there any gamble or risk worth taking, to just quote Alex here, Max, with Ohtani as a pivot on a FanDuel lineup?
Yeah, I love Ohtani. I think the problem with me used to be that he walked too many guys and didn't throw enough pitches. They just never would let him go deep into games. 95, I think, last time out. 93 pitches last time out. That's really encouraging. Like if they let him get to 100, I don't care if he walks some guys because he's going to have strikeouts and he's not 10K. Like he's 7.6 on DK. I think the price is really good. The strikeout matchup is great against Seattle. Like they have some guys that strike out upwards of 30%. Taylor Trammell's striking out at 40%. So it's just a really good spot, really good matchup. And the West Coast is where you want your pitchers to be today. The East Coast is really nice and warm and humid. And the West Coast has, decent weather, 69 degrees in LA, but that's not like 90 degrees and humid. So yeah, I'm very much interested in Ohtani today.
I smell an under 9 after that.
Yeah. Under 9 sounds. I mean, I don't know who Robert Duggar is. I thought he was a hitter on San Francisco, but yeah. I mean, I wouldn't put the Angels putting up a 10 spot past them.
Fair enough. All right. Well, let's look at that. And if there's anybody who's got their eye on the weather anywhere around the country, we know it's Alex. So apply that factor into this. How many bats can you stack versus maybe a one-off or two in this game?
Well, the fact that you can't pick Ohtani as a bat really hurts.
True.
I'm serious. Like,
for sure.
It just makes any stack you have a little bit less potent, and that's a significant negative for the Angels. So it does look like the top of the order is going to be super high owned too. And I think it makes sense because Rendon and Walsh, very good players that aren't expensive tonight. So I might fade them for that reason, but they look like good plays.
Real quick, I will jam these next two games, and I promise you in this final 4 minutes that we have. But I'm curious, Alex, about you mentioning the risk reward of Ohtani walking more so than Kang, and I wonder if there's any outside shot at playing, if not a stack, maybe a couple of one-offs on Seattle in the event that happens.
Yeah, I think the stack looks fine. The park isn't great today, like 70 degrees, pretty much what you expect in LA. but they're very cheap. That means you can get 2 ace pitchers with your Seattle stack. And I mean, they got some talented guys. Kelenic hasn't been good so far, but we know he's a top prospect. Haniger has been slugging pretty well along with Seager, so you can start making a decent lineup.
All right, let's look at Jake Arrieta on the mound in San Fran. Kazmir on the other end of it, ridiculously low cost for Kazmir, Max. So are you in Arrieta, you mixed bag that you're getting with Jake? Any approach here with these pitchers?
No Arrieta, and I didn't even know Kazmir was in the league still. Like, this is a guy that was on the Rays. What, like when I used to be in college? No, it can't be that old. But like 10 years ago, he used to be on the Rays and was a strikeout pitcher. But yeah, I mean, he gives up a ton of power so far, but it's not a big sample size. Striking out 20%, and Arrieta is way past his prime. 18% strikeouts. Yeah, for me, it's more like, I would like the hitters here, but it's just such a pitcher's park when it's 55 degrees, even though they did, move the fences in or whatever. But like 55 degrees is just not good hitting weather, especially on a slate where you have a bunch of 80-degree games.
Anybody worth a one-off in your opinion, Alex? Maybe even paying up in this situation?
Yeah, I mean, the Cubs are interesting, like pay up to be a contrarian spot. Or Posey's kind of a question mark for me. I mean, he has a great spot in the order for catcher, and he's been like slugging the ball way better than previous years. So it's always making you question, like, is there a reason for that? Because if there is, he could be a pretty good fantasy play.
I agree.
We've made it, and we have 90 seconds to jam this final game in here. The Mets all the way out west, and this has been the theme, right? As far as its pitching weather out west, it's hitting weather out east, depending on where you are, where you live, how you're watching this show here. So, Max, let's start with you. Wind down here at the pitching matchup, and we've been waiting all night to get to Blake Snell. Are you getting to much Snell in your lineups?
You're burying the lead here, dude. It's Joey Lucchesi revenge game. That's the lead.
Best Mets named pitcher ever. I don't care about all these other legends that have taken the mound.
Lucchesi has some connections in Jersey, I'm sure.
Yes.
I don't like Blake Snell today. I think that's my other hot take of the day, is that 30% ownership is too much for a guy that's just walking way too many guys. 15% walks. The strikeouts are great at 32%, but he's also given up hard contact, slugging of 450. And this Mets lineup doesn't really strike out much. So I think this is my fade guy of the day. He's priced down, so people will pivot to him over the 10K guys. And I would much rather play the 10K guys.
All right, Alex, any thoughts on the pitchers before we look at the bats and close this thing down?
I do feel like Snell's a great option today. So I'm on the other end of this. The Mets just haven't been able to stay healthy. Their lineup has looked pretty rough recently. So they do have worse than average stats and strike out more than average, which is a nice combination. And San Diego is a good pitcher's park. So I do feel like Snell is a great option.
All right. Now, on the flip side there, working with Snell on the stack element as we wind down here. And a reminder is just put up on the chat. These two gentlemen just blasted through 15 games in 60 minutes. If that doesn't deserve a like, if that doesn't deserve a subscription, a share, and everything else, the notification bell, all encompassed, I don't know what does. All right. I give up at that point. Let's just wind down before Live Before Lock takes you over on this same stream. So don't go anywhere here. Anything on the bat side, especially Alex, knowing that you're going to roll with Snell?
Nah, I think you can fade this one just because there's a lot better parks today.
Weather, right, Max?
Yeah, always. I mean, Tatis is always interesting. Guy came back and started hitting home runs right away. Has some of the most insane expected stats that I've seen. It's pretty much him and Acuna leading the league in that department, and Vladdy, I guess. But yeah, you can always play him as a one-off. He's super expensive. I don't think the park really matters for him.
Tatis home run, not bad odds, especially in that park. Any final thoughts on a home run play from Alex, then Max?
Yeah, I'll be tilting out a Ohtani home run until we can play him as a hitter and pitcher on the same day.
I love it, Max.
Rafa Devers goes yard against Michael King.
Awesome stuff. Gentlemen, thank you both. Thanks to Tyler. Get the likes up. Awesemo Plus. It's $29.95. It's easy. It's simple. It's a great tool across all of the programs, including Live Before Lock coming up right now. Thank you to all of you out there participating. Good night and good luck.
Awesemo, here we go. It's your old pal EMac coming to you on a Friday night of all things. That doesn't happen very often. I kind of own the weekend shows, but we've got an extended night tonight with NBA coming on after us, so we're shaking things up a little bit. I am joined by Terry McBride. You guys know him as T McB. He does quite a few shows with me and even more without me. Terry, how's it been? It's been like a week since we've chatted.
Yeah. Well, on the air anyway, but
Yes.
Things are good. Doing pretty well. And brutal night of DFS baseball last night for me. I don't know where I went wrong. Just one of those nights where I guess we just didn't have a couple high scoring games. I think it was 6 or 7 runs was the peak, and stacks just kind of didn't come through. And the stacks that did come through, I just didn't have the right combination. So it was a couple big scores in each lineup, but not nearly enough of the right guys put together. So it was a rough one. But looking to turn it around today, I think this is a super interesting slate. I'm excited to talk about it.
Absolutely. And we're gonna get some questions in here. We're gonna focus. I mean, those guys just went through 15 games. That is just yeoman's work. I have to do that on Saturdays and then do it again. But to do it on a Friday, we did, no Wrigley, no teams with the day off. If you guys have noticed that Major League Baseball actually has been changing up the last 2 seasons, some of their off days. non-pandemic related, and some teams just aren't playing on certain Sundays and certain Fridays. So we'll jump on in here and get into the good stuff. I want to remind everybody as we cross over from the deeper dive to the live before lock, we'd love it if you hit that thumbs up. That makes us happy. Even better if you subscribe. That helps us grow our YouTube following, which in turn allows us to bring free content to you. There are 2 shows coming after us focusing on the NBA tonight. So that is a 9 o'clock tip off, and you'll get 2 hours discussing one game. So this should be a fun one. A lot of theory and strategy. And this is a nice reminder that we went from 4 games the other day to now we're down to 1. We're going to have a couple more 2-game slates, but it doesn't look like there'll be any more 3-game slates with the way the series have played out. So hopefully you guys got in all the good stuff there. We do have a promo here, and then I promise we'll give you some free stuff too. But if you really like Awesemo Plus, here's your chance to jump in and get it. Use the promo code MLB Live Before Lock at checkout, and you will get a 15% discount if you are a new user on your first week of Awesemo Platinum. That's MLB Live Before Lock, all caps, one word, 15% off your first week of Awesemo premium content if you are a new user. Finally, the free content, NBA today, player rankings, MLB top pitchers. That's what we're focusing on next. We've got NHL player rankings, and then the MMA top fighters will be rankings will be available today through tomorrow's MMA lock. All right, Terry, let's talk about this a little bit. At the high end, and I'm going to turn you loose here. The high end, we have Scherzer. I live in the DC area. Apparently, it is Scherzer's day today. He is taking on the evil Philadelphia Phillies. On the other side, they have Mr. Wheeler, who is in a nice spot. We have Freddie Peralta going against the Diamondbacks. I'm not as convinced as some that the Diamondbacks are a decent offense. That some would be Gundacker. I heard a snippet of his show, and he was kind of singing their praises a little bit. Peralta distinctly discounted from everybody on Fanduel over on the blue side. Terry will cover that. And then Ohtani on DK, he's free. He's like 7,600. You should just pre-populate your lineups with that. Fanduel, it gets a little more tricky because he's probably not going to get a quality start, and that's something that is important for their scoring there. He works out better on DK because of the strikeout upside. And then the last guy I've got my eye on that I'm playing more than double digits is Cody Poteet. He's cheap. But if you put in him and Ohtani on DK, you get almost 4,500 per batter slot.
Yeah, so now you're getting to pretty much whatever you want to do.
Anything you want.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that now is your role, Terry. Anything you want. The world is your oyster. Talk about the pitching.
Wow, what a dream. It's interesting. I mean, Poteet it's an interesting spot. We've seen guys succeeding recently against that Pittsburgh lineup. They are not a very good lineup in general. So I could see him going out there and having a decent start. He's not coming up that strongly for me. So it's not really a spot where I need him like on the FanDuel slate at 6,900. I just don't really know what I'm going to do with that. So I'm not really getting there, but I understand the play for sure on the DK side of things. It's a pretty decent spot on both sides of that game. Both of these teams are fairly weak offenses. The one thing I'll say on the Pittsburgh side to their end as a potential slight uptick is they've got Brian Hayes back in the lineup. Very solid young hitter. So he gives them a little bit of a boost that wasn't there recently. And now you're dealing with Adam Frazier off the top into Hayes, Reynolds, Polanco. That's a decent little trio there. So I don't really hate, 2, 3, 4 in that lineup. Then you get Jacob Stallings, who has been flashing decent power in some spots. The back end of that lineup is not the best, but there's not a ton of strikeouts there either. That starting lineup has an average current year strikeout rate of just 18.8%. That's among league leading. So I'd be a little bit concerned getting too overweight with Cody there. He's not at all owned on the FanDuel slate. I don't have the DK ownership immediately in front of me, but I assume it would be a fairly decent little piece of ownership. So I'd maybe shop around for some other value guys if there's anybody at a similar kind of a rate. And maybe consider we don't need necessarily to lock the two values in going to Ohtani and him. Maybe you go to Ohtani and get to one of the mid-range, Snell, somebody like that, even an Eovaldi going up against the potential decent strikeout spot for the Yankees. But I get what you're doing with Poteet. It's not off the board by any means on the DraftKings slate. It's a good spot going up against those Pirates. He's sitting at a 23.2% strikeout rate, under a one whip, nice whip actually, 0.84, inducing 12% swinging strike. So it's been there for him. just not a great strikeout matchup. There's just not much threat coming back the other way for power or anything else from the Pirates. Jumping to that Nats-Phillies game, I think those are two very interesting pitchers. I kind of wish they weren't going up against one another, but it is what it is. I think Scherzer's in a much better spot. Phillies quietly 6th worst in baseball, 25.8% strikeout rate against right-handed pitching so far this season, 12% worse than average creating runs against righties, just a 143 ISO in the split. Scherzer sitting at a 36.5% strikeout rate over his 69 and a third innings and 11 starts. So he's giving decent depth there as well, striking out a ton of hitters, inducing 16.5% swinging strikes, 32.1% called plus swinging strike rate, 3.0 xFIP, 0.82 whip. He's dominating. So he is Max Scherzer. He's in a good spot here. Philly's frisky. It's not like Philly's offense isn't capable, but we're talking about a Philly offense with Odubel Herrera, Gene Segura leading at the top in the top 2 spots, leading into Hoskins and Real Muto, who are very much a threat, and then into Brad Miller, a struggling Andrew McCutchen, Alec Bohm, and Ronald Torres. It's not exactly the best possible Phillies lineup we could see. So I expect Max to have a nice game against this team. Going up the other way, Wheeler, a little bit worse of a spot. Wheeler's pitching very well. Is giving you decent depth, but the Nats are striking out just 22.2% of the time against righties. That's 3rd best in baseball. They've limited in run creation a little bit. They're 13% below average. They've lacked power at 137 ISO, but it's just not maybe as strong a strikeout spot as we've got with some of these other guys. And then with the power threat in the lineup between the Juan Sotos, the Josh Bells, the Kyle Schwarbers of the world, I think it's a little bit more of a dangerous spot for Wheeler. But those are 2 of my top, let's say, 5 projected starters on both sides. So I'm fine with going to either one of those guys. My definite guy to go to that you mentioned out of the group there is Freddie Peralta. I think he's going to be my pitcher that I'm going to have the most of. He's popular, particularly on FanDuel. You mentioned the price, $8,700 is a great price. I'm not really worried that much about that Diamondbacks lineup. They are decent in terms of the strikeouts. They are sitting. Let me find it here. Bear with me. I have a second. I just scrolled away from it. Well, Freddie's at a 37.2% strikeout rate so far this year, 15.2% swinging strikes, 56 and 2/3 inning and 10 starts. So he's giving you just underneath that quality start threshold per start. Easily can get to that path. 3.34 xFIP, 0.92 whip so far. And that whip is pretty solid considering he's got a 10.8% walk rate. That if that comes down, he's just going to be absolutely dominant. He's 98th percentile expected batting average against, 90th percentile expected slugging against, 76th percentile hard hit, 78th average exit velo against, 96th percentile strikeout rate. He's just been excellent. Each of his 4 pitches sits below a 350 expected slugging percentage against this year and generates better than a 33% swing and miss rate. He's dominant. So I think there's a good reason to pay for him at 10-4 where he's priced correctly on DK and absolutely eat up that bargain price on FanDuel at $8,700. Finally got to the bottom of this paragraph that I'm basically reading from my article at this point, but Arizona's 12th in baseball with a 23.5% strikeout rate. So that's the number I was looking for. They are decent limiting the strikeouts against righties. Not incredible. That's around the middle of the league at 30 teams. 142 team ISO is low. 38 home runs are around average, a little bit below average. Creating runs 12% worse than average in the split. So it's a targetable spot in my opinion for a guy like Peralta.
All right, that one is kind of interesting. I want to circle back on Poteet just a little bit here, and hopefully I'm saying his name correctly. He's not actually a popular option on DraftKings. Looks like he's coming in single digits. It gets a little tough kind of trying to predict those, but it looks like he's coming in between 5 and 6%. I have set his cap at 20% on my DK crunch. I had some people that talked to us a little bit, Terry. One of the nice things you get with any of the Awesemo premium, what am I looking for? Subscriptions. I was trying to think of promo code. I'm like, I didn't give you a premium promo code, but it is MLB Live Before Lock that'll get you 15% off 1 week of Awesemo premium content if you're a new user. We get all the Slack channel stuff, and you have that set up, that DFS 101 channel where we just let in some new people and people that want to kind of learn, and they ask a lot of basic questions. So a lot of people, that are advanced beyond that, there's nothing exciting for them to see there. But one of the things I get asked a lot about is my settings for Cruncher. So I do my stuff a little bit differently than most of our other Awesemo hosts. I kind of do it a touch more what I would call old school, which is how probably a lot of you would be approaching it. While I'm good in Excel, I work in it all day and I want nothing to do with it at night. So what I just kind of like to play around with the settings in Fantasy Cruncher. How it works, DK, you got to set, you don't want to run wide open player caps. You want to push down on the ownership percentage. So for pitchers, you have to have 2 pitchers, 100% each. That's 200%. If your settings are not at least 200%, it's just not going to crunch, or it's not going to make all the lineups you want it to. I generally set that around 225 to 250. So I just go in, start everybody at 5% and start going up from there, decide who I want to be over, who I want to be under. For players, I usually go about 30% on a slate like this, and I don't worry about anything else because I'm controlling everything via stacks. Tonight, I'll probably set everybody at 3, and I'm trying to figure out where I want to go from there. But from there, I'd probably have Colorado like at 10 or 12, maybe even 15 in that nature. And by keeping everything else low, it'll still get a few of those teams, but it'll focus on the teams I want. If you just run everything at 10%, it's just going to take the best projections it can find. So there's some quick tips and tricks for those of you that are kind of new to using Fantasy Cruncher or other optimizers. It's the same thing.
And it's just to tack on to that, it's much more acceptable and basically recommended to push and pull things a little bit more with baseball, where you're trying to get a little bit more of a position and take a deliberate position on the field rather than letting the math dictate like we do in basketball, where there are just rates and minutes and guys are going to be within a standard deviation and a half of their probable outcome. In baseball, it's very, very different, where we're trying to capture these event-based outcomes and capture the variance and get to these correlated hitters. So you want to be doing a little bit more of a push and pull to get to certain advantageous spots in baseball, a lot more than you do in the other sports.
Yeah, because otherwise it'll do everything it asks you to. All optimizers will. If you want a 4-4 double stacking Coors and Scherzer and Wheeler, you'll get it. It's just not going to be the hitters you think it's going to be until all of a sudden you're looking at your life going, wait, what? Why do I have the 7 through 9 hitters on both teams? That's not what I envisioned. So you have to be just a little cognizant of that. But back to sort of the pitching here, because I wanted to say, here's where we start to look at sort of leverage and where do you want to go. So I will look at each player and I will choose if I want to go above or below. So like today, Scherzer's at about 40% on our last ownership update there. So I'm going to go at 30. I try to decide if I'm going to go up 10% or down percent on the 10% on the popular ones. Rarely will I match somebody. Blake Snell, I'm only going 10%. We have him at 33%. Normally I'd be all over the Snell elevator on this one. 2 back-to-back horrible starts. He got relieved by Joe Musgrove, who then threw 5 innings. What was that Sunday? I think that was just crazy. How did that happen? What do you think's going on with Snell? Because that's going to be normally we'd be all fired up to get him. He's just has phenomenal strikeouts still, even with the last 2 less than stellar outings. Am I being overly harsh on him? What do you think?
No, I mean, he's been a major question mark in terms of the average depth of start. He's only completed 6 innings once this year. His 2 most recent that you just mentioned, he had rough starts, gave up 5 runs in one, 7 runs in the other, lasted 3 2/3 in one, 3 innings in the other. 32.1% strikeout rate still, 12.8% swinging strikes, 3.60 xFIP. The whip is outrageous, though, 1.60 whip. That is not what they brought him to San Diego to do. So it's just a little bit rough. He's got a 14.2% walk rate so far this year. So he's just putting way too many hitters on. And it's difficult to trust him right now in terms of that, because he's also 26th percentile expected slugging percentage against. He's decent in terms of the average exit velo. Guys aren't getting great average exit velocity against him. For a guy who throws pretty hard, that's impressive. But guys are getting a good part of the bat on the ball, decent amount, 17th percentile in barrel rate, 53rd percentile in hard hit rate. So he's just pitching. He's getting away with a lot, it seems like. The strikeouts are still there. The chase is still decent. But I'm a little bit concerned about what we're seeing here, what we're getting from him. I can't quite put my finger on what it might be in the pitch mix. Just looking at it, it looks like he's throwing his fastball a decent amount less, throwing significantly more sliders. Sliders up from 15% to 22% this year so far. Fastball, four-seam fastball down from 50.6 to 44.9% usage. The velo's about the same, spin's about the same, so it's not that. Just, he's getting the fastball's been a little bit more effective for him in less usage. But yeah, some concerning changes in the pitch mix that maybe aren't working out so well for him so far. And what gets me is the depth. I'm just concerned about the depth. Even when he's pitched well, we haven't seen him go deep into games. So that would concern me here.
Yeah, absolutely. On that side of things, it's a little terrifying to earmark that much salary and potentially go negative. Now, the New York Mets are missing a lot of key hitters. I mean, basically half their starting lineup of their hitters is on their injured list right now. So a lot of them are lefties, and it wouldn't be the best for this matchup. It's not the same Mets team that they were really good on offense last year. Then they added Francisco Lindor, and then now Conforto's hurt, Nimmo's hurt, a couple other guys are out. It's just kind of a mess.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask about in that same game, Joey Lucchesi coming back. I'm sure he he's Italian, right? I'm just guessing. He must have sent a horse's head to the opposing manager just to remind him, hey, I used to play for this team. What are you thinking about him or targeting against him? 4.4 implied run line here for San Diego. Again, I don't know if that's one of the lineups we're still waiting on here. Oh, no, we do have the lineup. So we do have Tommy Pham in. He's been dinged up a little bit. Fernando Tatis dinged up a little bit, playing through the shoulder injury and a few other things. We've got Machado in there. So they're loaded for bear at this point, with the exception of Webster Rivas, who it's a catcher batting eighth. But
First time ever.
I was just guessing on how to pronounce this. Chivas Rigo? I don't know. What are you thinking here about Lucchesi? Is this as we start to turn over? We're not quite on stacks yet, but while we were in this game, I wanted to mention he's kind of bad.
Yeah, well, now that you stopped talking, we can start talking stacks, because it didn't occur to me to roster Joey Lucchesi as a pitcher here. I would definitely throw some San Diego bats at him. Top end of that lineup is loaded, like you mentioned. And they don't strike out very much. That confirmed lineup has an average strikeout rate this year of 18.3%. So that is a very good lineup. He is not going to be long for this game, I don't think. He's pitched well in his 23 and a third over 5 starts, 27% strikeout rate, 3.88 xFIP, 1.29 whip, a little higher than we'd like to see from somebody that we would consider rostering against this Padres team. Only a 10.1% swinging strike rate. You'd like to see that a little bit higher to roster somebody against this Padres team here. So just a lot of indicators against, not getting a great projection on them. I do understand 6,500 on DK could be useful. I don't think the fantasy points that are going to come with that price tag are going to be useful for you, though. So Lucchesi, not a spot for me here. I would take Pod's bats against him. Getting not great home run marks for them, but decent projection up and down. It's that kind of a lineup. So, and then you of course get Machado and Tatis pulling things up in terms of the home run marks. I would get to Padres side of things, particularly with not much ownership on them.
Absolutely. So we're going to kind of transition a little bit more into the stacks here. Then we'll take some questions from you guys. I do want to mention that we'll kind of cover things from leverage, popularity, price, production, stuff like that. But before we get there, we do have to mention Awesemo Odds Shopper. It is one of the sister sites of Awesemo, and it's one of the biggest edges you can get in sports betting is to shop the lines and or shop the odds. Basically, what that means is the different sports wagering companies have different levels for player props. They're all going to kind of be about the same for baseball, because it's it's in such hard increments that you can't make little increments. But for basketball, you can find stuff all over the place. For football, it gets even better. You can find a running back that has plus or minus 17 yards for their over under rushing total, depending on which book you're looking at. And then even if those books all have the same player prop, they'll hit the juice harder or softer than some of their competitors. Just by doing that, you're looking at about a 7 to 8% profitability increase. You still got to get the bet right. You got to do all of that right, but you're not overpaying. It's like getting something on sale. You're shopping the odds, much like you would, shop a bargain at the grocery store, or the car dealership, or whatever. But you can check that out. It's even if you're in a state that does not have sports betting or does not have it yet, it's always good to go in and check that stuff out for DFS projections. A lot of people just build their projections off of those player props, especially pitch out striker props. You can look at 5-inning run lines, things like that, see kind of what the true total is going to be against your pitcher. But check that out. It's all completely free. You can sign up for, you don't have to sign up. You can sign up for an account there. You can track your bets via that. You can set notifications that say, hey, if this line does this, send me an alert, etc. There's all sorts of nifty bells and whistles there. It's one of the better hidden gems that we have that we'd like more and more people to learn about. All right, Terry, we're going to save Coors. That's going to be the dessert, shall we say.
There are 3 players on this slate whose name is Taylor, and then the first 2 letters of their last name is W-A. That's absurd. Sorry, I was trying to find Taylor Walls to pop his placeholder projection in here.
Why are we talking about these guys? Okay, that makes
Taylor Ward, Taylor Walls, and some other Taylor.
Gotcha. Yes. All right. So my favorite stack, when we talk about our, they're not sponsoring the show, but we talk a little bit about our friends over there at Yahoo. Boston Red Sox going against Michael King. So seemingly, yes, once again, we have a Boston Yankees weekend series. I think we're obligated to have at least one every other week, but this is going to be just the second start for King this season. All 7 of his appearances have been multi-inning outings. He's probably good to go about 60 to 70 pitches today on the top end. While he's no longer technically considered a rookie, he only has 50.2 innings or 50 2/3 innings in the majors. That spread across 3 years. The projection systems, they're kind of like, yeah, you look like a multi-inning reliever. Hey, what he sort of is. About between a 7.8 and an 8.3 K per 9, looking at Steamer and Pacoda and Sierra and different things like that. Home runs looking like 1.3 to 1.4, so that's not that great. Does an okay job of limiting the walks, but what this also means coming after him, and you can fill in this because I don't watch the Yankees quite as much, but I went and looked to see who's got the freshest arms. It's Nestor Cortez, Lucas Lutage, and Wandy Peralta. The lefties, or the first 2 are lefties, and then you got righty Jonathan Losiega, who seems to be, those guys are going to probably combine for 4 or 5 innings. Was there any other swing reliever or anybody called up at all in the last day or 2 that might be missing out of that? Because none of these guys are fireballers. None of these guys are scary.
I think Sessa's out there as well. I don't know what his most recent performance was. I would expect either Sessa, Loaizaga. I wouldn't necessarily. We'll probably get an inning out of Wandy Peralta at some point.
Yeah, he's going to get 16 pitches with 2 strikeouts.
Yeah, I don't think he's going to be like the bulk guy behind King. Right. Or if King comes out in the second, I would expect that's going to be either Loaizaga or Sessa.
Sessa he's gone 3 of the last 4 days, so he won't go.
Okay, so that would probably be Loaizaga then. He's an upside arm. I think he just went earlier in the week though. I feel like
he went Wednesday and Tuesday.
Wednesday.
So
okay. Yeah. So it was Wednesday. I was watching him. So yeah, then he's got a couple innings for us. So I would expect Loaizaga. And he's an upside arm. He's got some strikeout potential, but I really like this spot for the Red Sox. And it's not like, some of the Yankees bullpen numbers are skewed by the high leverage guys in the back end. Your Chad Greens, your Aroldis Chapmans of the world who strike out a ton of guys, pitch to extremely low ratio stats. Some of these other guys, it's not like you can look up the Yankees bullpen numbers and then say like, oh, they're I think it was 6th best xFIP for a bullpen. That's not necessarily what we need to target here. So I think if we're looking at guys like Loaizaga, I think we can kind of take King's numbers forward. Loaizaga is a little bit better right now, but it's negligible enough that we can kind of consider these full game projections for the Red Sox, in which case they look like a great option today. I begrudgingly wrote them up in my column as my featured stack of the day. I touched on the Coors game. I touched on the Royals. I was trying to get myself out of it, but the Red Sox just profiled too well in terms of power, in terms of just general upside for this game. Playing in Yankee Stadium is a favorable park to hit in. Just really like everything about it. They got Enrique Hernandez out of the leadoff spot. Typically don't want a guy who gets on base less than 30% of the time. That said, they replaced him with Danny Santana, who he's got a ton of power speed upside, but I don't know.
2,400 on DK. Come on. First base and outfield. He's going to be
2,500 on FanDuel. Yeah, he is going to be extremely popular. So that FanDuel projection we've got for ownership, I think will go up a little bit for him. But I absolutely love the middle of this lineup. Martinez, Bogarts, and Rafael Devers. The 3 of them are creating runs 52% better than average as a trio so far this season. Just a ton to love there. You can tack Alex Verdugo, lefty bat, capable of going deep in Yankee Stadium at any point, having a great year this year. So really, really like the Red Sox. I don't love Christian Arroyo down the bottom, and Danny Santana I can take or leave, and Marwin Gonzalez hitting 7th. I don't know why this guy is in the major leagues other than the fact that he can play in the field at multiple positions, sitting 190, 281, 272 with a .082 ISO, creating runs 42% worse than average so far this year. That is not a good hitter.
All right, stack number 2 is going to be the Brew Crew going against Peacock. I see somebody was asking, do we think the roof will be open? The 2 sites that I look at that I sort of trust, both have it as open. You would think there would be better places. The only place that I found that has the best roof information is Chase Field roof. The other stadiums are like you can't find it consistently. You can't find it on social media. It's a disaster. So to me, it's just like one of those things. That's like, why wouldn't there be one consolidated? There used to be a site, but they didn't get a lot of traffic, so they went away. That used to have it, but it looks like the roof probably is going to be open. It's going to be really nice. It's going to be first time a game. First pitch temperatures are going to be around 82, 83, and it's going to hover into really not get below the mid 70s for this one. So I would think the roof will be open.
Yeah, and just something on that, people ask that one a lot. People ask about wind direction and things like this, and they are somewhat important factors in terms of the environment, what the park factors play like. But that's also something that Vegas accounts for us.
Yes.
That's in the run totals, right? So that's baked in already for us. So if you're going out of your way to adjust projections because a roof is open, that's you're basically doubling up on that spot. You're increasing the run total unnecessarily. So it's something to be aware of, and something to not necessarily worry about too much. That's like when people ask me, my answer is consistently, I have no idea, because it's something that I just don't check. I just rely on the Vegas line to take care of that for me. Same with the wind. That's why I'm rarely on top of what the wind looks like. It's a factor, sure. It can matter, sure. But Vegas is already cleaning that up for us, so I just don't worry about it.
All right, looks like the only lineup we're waiting on is the Mets. That's probably because Jonathan VR is a little dinged up, so we may or may not get that one.
And the Mariners.
But yep, we just got those. So if you want to do a little refreshing, I'm going to mention the Brew Crew here. So this will be the 4th start for Matt Peacock, who's began the season out of the bullpen. This is likely his last stop, Terry, because if he doesn't stick here or at least make it as an innings eater, there's nowhere else for him to go. There's not much upside for him. He was barely into the top 35 prospect rankings just for the Diamondbacks this year. He was drafted as, I want to say, a 23-year-old after 3 years of college. He languished in the low minors for quite some time. Then we had the pandemic year, and here he is. Not a lot of upside with his pitching. We know what we're getting from him. Was basically a reliever in college as well. So I'm okay with Christian Yelich. Max brought up some good points. He likes to look at a lot of launch angles and things like that. Mm-hmm. And he mentioned that that's absolutely like that next level stat. Because I'm going to sit here and give you the old timey, it looks like he's seeing the ball well, right? That's not what we want to use for our analysis. So I still am a big believer in Christian Yelich. I think he will turn things around. He was the NL MVP in 2018 or whatever it was. So yes, he's slumping a bit now. I'm still comfortable with him. Why? Well, he does have a nice cast of cheapies around him. You got the former Mariners and Dan Vogelbach and Omar Narvaez, who are excellent in lefty-righty matchups. They've got Shaw, who's also in there. These guys all have massive holes in their swing, but we're not looking at a strikeout pitcher tonight. Now, he is more of a ground ball pitcher than anything else, but these guys, with the exception of whatever's going on with Yelich right now, tend to have more of the uppercut swings, which helps them against ground ball pitchers. And that's where I'm just sort of saying, hey, this collection of talent, how can you leave out Christian Yelich if you're going with the Brew Crew stack? It becomes a little difficult. So he had a good point. Maybe we don't play him as a one-off, because if we're just not seeing the home run upside, but hey, what if he hits a nice laser double and it's a bases clearing double? Well, all of a sudden that's going to be a nice score. That's absolutely in play at this point, even if he's still tinkering with the swing. So that's my number 2 stack. Want to rebut that one? You want to jump on board?
No, I'm with you. And honestly, I would not sweat Christian Yelich all that much in terms of what he's done, in terms of the launch angle. I think he did just hit a home run the other night too. The Brewers have been projecting very, very well in terms of their power upside. I still don't think it's necessarily a very good lineup overall, just in terms of a baseball team. But there are some thumpers in this lineup between Dan Vogelbach, Avi Garcia in the right spot, Travis Shaw in the right spot, Omar Narvaez in the right spot. But Christian Yelich is a superstar, man. I mean, he's proven it to me. I'm not worried about the guy here. Still creating runs 20% better than average in his only 92 plate appearances so far this season. So it's not like he's really letting us down even when we do roster him. Maybe we're not getting the massive home run, but we're getting the run production we want. 391 on base. He's an engine in this offense. So even if we're only rostering him so that he's on base, we capture a couple singles, a walk, whatever it is, so that he's on base when a guy like Travis Shaw or Omar Narvaez does go deep at no ownership, that's a reason to roster Christian Yelich in stacks right there, let alone the fact that he's one of the best players in baseball. So I'm fine with putting Yelich in. That said, you're paying $5,100 for him on DK, 16% ownership. $3,600 is a discount on Fanduel, but you're eating 25% ownership. It's just a tough spot in terms of the ownership there. Most of the other guys in the lineup are not getting owned that much. So I agree. I think it's less of a one-off for Yelich and more of a stack spot for the Brewers getting through that part of the order from, take or leave Luis Urias up top. But, the 2 through 6 hitters at least, I would tack Willie Adames and Jackie Bradley onto the bottom of that as well.
All right, if you just heard that little ding, that was the notification from Awesemo, because I have subscribed and hit the notification bell. That means we're 30 minutes away from the Deeper Dive and Live Before Lock NBA shows. So I'm going to turn Terry loose here on Coors Field in just a moment. We're going to talk a little Awesemo Hall of Fame, and then we'll take some questions here. But I did want to remind you guys, like and subscribe. It's a very helpful reminder of what's going on here. The other stack I was kind of looking at a little bit. We just got the New York lineup as well. So we are locked and loaded here for Bear. I'm waiting for the alert from News God to say all lineups are in. There is
waiting for somebody to ask what Bear you keep talking about.
What Bear?
You said loaded for Bear like 3 times.
Oh, loaded for Bear. I love that phrase. I'm fired up for that one today. Clearly. There saw a fox in our yard. I killed a snake 2 weeks ago. It was about 2.5 feet long, about 3.5 pounds. I mean, it was like, I thought it was good. Like it was big. It wasn't like the little ones that. Yeah, not like a little. It was like I can't have my wife see that because I almost stepped on it coming out of our front porch. I'm like, no, my wife will want to move. I told her I killed a snake. I didn't tell her how big it was. She was like, "Oh, you're lucky I didn't see it. We would have put the house up for sale." I'm like, jeez, yeah, that's why I took care of it. It was the circle of life. I didn't want to, but this is a big one. So
you're a better man than I. Yeah, that sounds like a killer be killed, eat or be eaten kind of a situation.
I looked online to see there were no unique markings or anything. So I mean, it was one of the rat snake or a bull snake.
Hey man, any snake that Indiana Jones would run from, I'm certainly not going to tangle with. So
it was a scary one. But I was going to say I kind of like Chicago tonight. They're going to be going in a bullpen game here against Scott Kazmir, who was away from the team the last couple of days for a personal matter. He is now the listed starter. Probably see like a Nick Tropiano or somebody else come in and probably see at least 3, maybe 4 pitchers today for this one. But I think that bodes well. Wilson Contreras leading off because, hey, Cubs, how often do you see a catcher leading off? Not very often, unless it's John Jaso, right? We got Chris Bryant here. We've got Anthony Rizzo, Javi Baez. Those are the key guys. Ian Happ, I was hoping to be a little higher in the lineup, but I'm still okay with him. Switch hitter. And then Jock Peterson, I'm glad they moved him down from the lineup because it means he'll probably stay in the game and it won't be a pinch hit risk. It looks like they're hoping he only has to face Kazmir once. He's not nearly as good against lefties as he is righties, but that's something I was not surprised by. I am surprised that Contreras is leading off. What do you got for the Rockies? Finish this one and then.
And the Cubbies had threatened with running some more Jock Peterson out there against left-handed pitching just throughout the course of the season, and said they were going to leave him in games and get him those at bats regardless. So it's an interesting spot for him, nice little RBI spot. I agree on Ian Happ, one of my favored hitters in that low price range that we see a lot that doesn't get a ton of attention. Struggling this year so far, but had a ton of great contact last year. I'm expecting some return to form for Ian Happ, hits from both sides of the plate, so I really like that. Top end of the Cubs lineup, kind of no-brainers there. Those are easy to get to. 350 on base percentage this year out of Wilson Contreras. That's decent for a leadoff hitter. I would take that. Although if I was Chicago, I would probably flip-flop it and have Chris Bryant lead off there with his 395, and then maybe just drop Anthony Rizzo or Javi Baez into the 2, swing Wilson Contreras back around to the 4. But that's why I'm not managing a professional baseball team. What was your other question? The Rockies?
Well, one more. I got to talk about the cobbler. Matt Shoemaker has been, wait for it, nailed twice already this season by Kansas City. 7 2/3 innings, 14 hits, 5 walks, 13 earned runs, 14 total runs. Somehow, just 2 home runs gave up all of that. Literally everybody who has gotten on base essentially has scored. He has allowed, 17 base runners, 14 of them have scored. That seems like some regression that's going to be coming a little bit more positive. But wow, I'm terrified of even considering Shoemaker at this point. I don't know that makes me go against him, but he's out of my cheapies. He's a 3% guy right now.
Oh, that very much makes me not that. I shouldn't say that because it's not because this team has gotten to him twice already this year, but he is very targetable on this slate. The Royals, I wish they were getting a little bit less ownership, but that said, there's really concentrated ownership on a couple of hitters, and then there's some freedom to move around within that lineup, particularly on DK. DK, you're really only getting Sal Perez getting a significant amount of ownership. Everybody else is kind of freed up. On FanDuel, you're getting a big chunk of ownership on Jorge Soler because he's the dead minimum. Giant home run upside against anybody, particularly in this spot against Shoemaker. I really like it. And then you're getting mid-range ownership on Sal, mid-range ownership on Whit Merrifield, but you can work in and out of Carlos Santana, Andrew Benintendi, Hunter Dozier. I like this lineup a lot, and I like it the way that it fits together with some other teams. You've got 3 guys in the lineup with multi-position eligibility, and then you get good players at decent spots. Like Sal Perez is a guy I'll roster in any situation. You get him as a catcher, that gives you some flexibility, gives you a great catcher to use on DK, but it also gives you a guy that you can move around a little bit on FanDuel. So I like what he does in lineups, and then you can just offset some of that ownership by going to a 5% on Hunter Dozier. If you wanted to work a Kelvin Gutierrez in at the 0.5% ownership, that's fine, 2,200 at third base. There are a lot of different ways you can put that together. Now, Gutierrez is not the best hitter in the world, but just given that lineup spot in this matchup, it's a strong opportunity. So I can get to this lineup basically top to bottom.
All right. Before you go with the Rockies Athletics, our friend, the news god, Ron, would like to know for FanDuel, the blue site, your top 3 hitters and your favorite pitcher for cash. And we had another question. Would you go Scherzer or Ohtani on FanDuel? I would go Scherzer, and then I would go Wheeler, and then I would go Peralta. I'm trying to find someone that's going to get a quality start.
I would go Peralta, Scherzer, Wheeler, then Ohtani, I think. I'm worried about the depth for Ohtani as well. He's been a little bit wacky this year. He had the game where he had to scratch because of the traffic incident. He's had a couple shortened starts. I think he's healthy. He went, I think, 6 his last time out. It's just a little bit concerning for me. It is a very good spot against the Mariners. I get a nice projection for him. I've basically got that group of hitters plus Blake Snell all kind of within the same range up at the top. Plus another name I'm not going to tell anybody to play, Luis Castillo, who still I cannot get to project poorly for me. He's an interesting guy to talk about real quick, actually, because he's getting BABIP'd to death this year. He's 390-something batting average on balls in play against so far this year. He has lost about a mile an hour off of his fastball. The differential between his fastball and his changeup has shrunk. There are compelling reasons to think that he is struggling significantly for reasons. It was a 371 batting average on play, So that's still a pretty high batting average on play on balls in play against. He's only also got a 54.2% strand rate right now for leaving runners on base when guys get on base, getting out of the inning without them scoring. That's really weak. He was a 58% ground ball guy last year, 55 the year before. He's only a tick below 50 this year. So there are some things in here that are a little bit luck-based, a little bit happenstance-based. It wouldn't totally shock me to see this guy return to form sometime soon. Whether that comes against a decent Cards lineup without a ton of strikeouts in it remains to be seen. This lineup, confirmed lineup, 21.7% average strikeout rate, and guys like Tommy Edman up top, only 10.5% strikeout rate is concerning. Arenado, 13.6 in the middle. That gets offset by O'Neill at 35.3 in the back end, Carpenter at 30.1. There are some Ks here, but it's a tough spot. So At 6,600 on FanDuel, I think he's got to be in play for me. Not drawing much ownership. I'm really concerned about it, and I wouldn't recommend it to people. But I think I might be there, if that makes sense.
All right. Coors, and then Tyler, you can give me the signal and we'll talk a little Awesemo Hall of Fame, and we'll make sure we're out of here so you guys can get the next 2 hours of Awesemo deep dive basketball style, and then live before lock. 2 hours for one game. Wasn't there 2 something for 1 something that was an internet meme a while ago? I don't remember.
Sounds right.
2
Something, some kind of BOGO thing. Yeah. Why not?
and a cup. Yeah, something like that. Ice cream.
Now I know what you're talking about.
I never saw that. Never want to.
Oh,
and
don't.
I can
Just
only
thinking about
envision how horrible it is just by even
Yeah,
mentioning
no,
it. So never Google.
I don't know who that's for, but that is not for me.
All right. Coors Field. It's yours, Terry. We got a couple of good pitchers here. We've got a very warm day and 11 implied run total.
Yeah, it's going to be good hitting conditions. It's Coors Field. We kind of know the reasons why to get here. It's a good A's lineup. I think there are some strikeouts there for John Gray, who is a good pitcher who knows how to pitch at Coors Field, but his strikeouts are down this year. 9.9% swinging strike rate, 19.5% strikeout rate overall, 4.27 xFIP and a 1.24 whip. He's fine. Like I think he's got a shot to be okay here. Like I don't think he's going to get completely torched by this team necessarily. So I'd be a little bit concerned about over rostering the A's bats, just given how much the public is going to be there on the key hitters. And then you look at this lineup that they're rolling out with Tony Kemp hitting second. That's kind of a clunker in the very important in the lineup. I'll add 2 spot. So I don't really get him hitting in that spot, and particularly for DFS purposes, just not an overly useful guy. So I don't love Tony Kemp there. And then you get, Jed Lowry in the middle. Seth Brown has a ton of power, but is a big-time strikeout guy. I don't know. There are arguments. Elvis Andrus at the bottom is also just a shadow of the player that he once was. Matt Chapman still struggling. There are reasons to, at very high ownership, maybe not over roster this A's team. It is Coors Field. They are a good lineup overall. There are plenty of good reasons to do it, but I'll be the one to say, maybe we don't go to Coors quite as much as it looks like we should. On the other side of things, I think the Rockies against Frankie Montas are actually kind of interesting. Somebody in the YouTube chat on the last show was talking about Frankie Montas coming in and surprising everybody. I vehemently disagree with that. Montas is sitting in the 18th percentile of expected slugging percentage, 18th percentile hard hit rate allowed, 12th percentile barrel rate allowed, has a 1.41 whip so far this year. Pitching at Coors Field, that's way too much good contact, way too many guys on base. He also is a 34% sinker usage guy, and sinkers, if you remember Mike Hampton and the good school districts, are where Coors Field is where sinkers go to die. So it's just not good for guys who work vertically. It's better for guys who work horizontally. I don't like the spot at all for Frankie Montas. I would throw some Colorado bats at him. Particularly, I think they're getting under-owned on both sites. You can avoid some of the higher-owned players here and just kind of dance in and out of the ownership if you need to, but I don't think you even need to. And I wouldn't sleep on a kid like Brendan Rodgers, hasn't done much yet, but high-end prospect down the bottom of the lineup there. Garrett Hampson gives you a little bit of hit tool and speed with multi-position eligibility. CJ Cron, massive power in the middle of the lineup. So there are guys to roster in that lineup. It's not great without Trevor Story in it, but I can tell the story a little bit better for – damn it, I did it again. I always do that with Trevor Story's name. But I can tell it a little bit better. I can sell the Rockies a little bit better, I think, than the A's side on this one.
All right. I just went in and set Tony Kemp and Elvis Andrus to 10% each because they are the ones coming up in my Oakland stacks, which is, of course, allowing me to get Ohtani, Zach Wheeler, Max Scherzer with impunity. I don't want to get there. And somehow I've got Mitch Keller at 22%. That feels a little bit high. We didn't even get to talk about both Kellers pitching on the same day. This is just like the two Ponce de Leon's pitching on the same day, the Andersons pitching on the same day, the Andrew Kashner, Chase Anderson conundrum. There's always just crazy names, pitching names with baseball. But there we go. So let's see. Who are the big boppers today for Dope Heathen? And then Tyler, we ready? Queuing me up.
The big boppers today. I guess I can
your home run
jump
picks?
to my I can jump over to the old home run model here. The home run pick, if I'm remembering my article today, was Carlos Santana from the Kansas City Royals, who I already talked about. Also getting great marks on Sal Perez from that team. Taking a look through the rest of these options here. Hunter Dozier's pulling a decent home run mark as well from the Royals, as is Jorge Soler, who is drawing a ton of ownership at the minimum price. All of those guys are in the top, let's call it 15 in my home run model. So I'm really liking the KC Royals. Justin Upton from the Angels is leading the way on the home run model today. I didn't want to go out on that limb. I just wasn't really feeling it, but he's leading off in a good spot for the Angels. Also getting Jared Walsh pulling a nice home run model there, home run mark there. I am getting a nice one on Christian Yelich as well and Dan Vogelbach. And I'll round it off with Pete Alonso is pulling a decent little mark going the other way for the Mets. So that's an interesting one.
All right. Well, let's talk a little bit about the Awesemo Hall of Fame, one of the nice little, one, promotions we have, and two, it's just fun to do. So all you got to do is download the Awesemo profile pic at awesemo.com/avatar and use that as your avatar on any DFS site. Tweet us when you get a win. It doesn't matter how big or small it is. Have some fun with this. DFS is supposed to be fun. 1, have fun. 2, don't lose money. That's the key thing. Or make the money last. That's what we want to help you here with at Awesemo. So here's one of the ways to do that. If you finish top 3 in any contest with 5,000 people or more, that there's no other catch. It doesn't have, it's 5-cent contest, $100 contest, whatever the entry fee is, just has to have 5,000 people in it. You finish top 3, follow the instructions. Tweet at Awesemo HOF, tweet at Awesemo_COM. Heck, tweet at me and Terry. We always like to see these. And you will get 30 free days of Awesemo premium content if you are representing the avatar. So we have a nice one here from Donnie Parker. He says, first tournament win ever, only been playing a couple months. Very nice. We like to see that one. Cruising along here, we get a little shout out from Nick Singh. Wait for it. There's a joke about praises and singing or something in there. But he's talking to Josh and Laffy and says, thanks for the strategy show. Tied for first in tiers for NBA, this Draft Daddy. And then we also have another one here from the real Coach S. We see him in chat from time to time. $280,000 night. Now, he's a great player. He did this in 3 different sports across 2 different sites, taking down the $800 NBA, MLB, and then the main NBA GPP.
Damn, dude, leave some for the rest of us.
Yeah, the same night. So hat tip there to Coach S. And not everybody has to be as, outstanding as that. But then we've got Nikhil 22 coming in here. Nice little golf. We have one of the best golf teams out there. The content is second to none, in my opinion. A little $80,000 nugget that he dropped there. So, wow, a lot of fun there with the Awesemo Hall of Fame. It's easy to do. Just have some fun with it. Put the avatar out there. We had someone who used the EMac 2024 for president logo that someone put together and tweeted us with the victory. I support that message. So hopefully they got their free Awesemo. Hammer says I belong on the Mount Rushmore of DFS. I don't know, but I certainly have been around forever. We are 20 days away from my 10-year anniversary of my first deposit at Fanduel. So that and a cup of coffee will get you a cup of coffee.
Maybe like a Fanduel like coffee koozie or something too. They might tell you something. 10 years. That's pretty solid. That's an early adopter.
I got one of these right here. See?
They got. I don't have you on the screen.
Oh, I got a Fanduel koozie. Actually.
Oh, there it is. Oh. There you go.
Hey, I've got a Seahawk one sitting there too. I don't ever use them, but they're just kind of sitting on my desk. But yeah, so we've got our shows coming up after us, so we're gonna hop on out of here. Reminder: the lock here is in another 10 minutes, but we have a little bit of time to get on into the fun. Definitely tune in to watch these other shows. Have a little dinner. I'm gonna go down see what's for dinner. Maybe bring up a plate and make some baseball lineups and NHL locks at 7:30. I know I've got lineups for that I need to make. So, final thoughts, Terry, before we get on out and do this all again tomorrow.
Oh, I am hoping that my reverse jinx on the writing up the Boston Red Sox works and my Yankees win a big one tonight. That's what I'm hoping for. Although it probably won't be good for my DFS outcomes.
It's you win some, you lose some, and as I like to say, it's only money, Terry.
Yeah, at least I'm well hedged. Either my Yankees win or I win some money, so I'll take it.
Absolutely. Well, tomorrow we start, 2 more shows tonight. Tomorrow we start off at 10 o'clock. We have the NBA strategy show that is going to be with Eytan and Adam. Terry and I, we're doing the MLB strategy show. That'll be at 11 tomorrow. At 1 o'clock, you've got the NASCAR strategy show. It's going to be Jason Floyd and Phil. At 2 o'clock, you got UFC Live Before Lock. I believe it's 4 o'clock Eastern time lock tomorrow. for that one. You're going to get Jason Floyd and Pete the Heat Rogers. 3 o'clock, you're going to get MLB Live Before Lock. Hey, it's me and Gunbacker coming back at you again, and then a couple NBA shows. And then we're going to do it all again on Sunday. We're going to be here. Hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell, and enjoy the Awesemo YouTube channel. With that, you can follow Terry over on Twitter at DigitalB21. I am at EMac DFS. And of course, it is Awesemo_COM. Check out the pinned tweet. We often are doing giveaways on Twitter. With that, gamers, good luck.